Chapter 254. There are 6 others like him? Bonita exclaimed. Not just 6. After No. W07, there are number 8 and number 9. Of course, the lower the ranking, the weaker they are. Bai Xiaowen said, according to W07's memory fragments, the spreaders at the top of the list are stronger than him. And the spreader W01 is the mastermind behind the undead plague in the entire White Stone Hill. He's even stronger than Ian. Bai Xiaowen paused for a moment before continuing. If the enemy we were facing in the end was just a leader-level powerhouse like Ian, I wouldn't have to spend so much effort to prepare. However, when I was searching through my memory fragments, I read a terrifying piece of news. What we're facing isn't one person, nor is it 10 people. It's an entire army. An entire legion? The other 3 people widen their eyes. According to No. W07's memory fragments, I speculated this information, but I don't have enough evidence. The lair of the spreader of the undead plague points to the Red Leaf Hill. Let's assemble the troops now and distribute weapons to everyone, including the bandit servants and the new residents. Let's go to the Red Leaf Hill, Bai Xiaowen said. But according to the Empire's law, a lord's army has no right to enter another lord's territory. Otherwise, it's tantamount to invasion. Bonita said. It's because the Empire has too many rules and regulations that the spreaders of the undead plague are so rampant, Bai Xiaowen said, shaking his head. And it's hard to say how bad the situation in the Red Leaf Hill has deteriorated and whether the Lord, March, is alive or dead. Bonita said, Since you found clues, why don't you go to the Blackstone Hill to find Archbishop Arlo or go to the Blackstone defense line to find Prince Nicholas? Asking them to send troops to the Red Leaf Hill should be better than going there yourself. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. There's no conclusive evidence that the Red Leaf Hill has been infiltrated by the spreaders of the undead plague. It's hard to convince the senior members of the Human Race Alliance army. In the end, Bai Xiaowen's status was not high enough. He was only a baron, and he was poor. White Stone Town was just an inconspicuous small piece of land among the many small noble families in the Empire. This was a hero-ranked side quest. How could it be completed so easily? He didn't need to let Bonita know about this. After half an hour of gathering, there were 327 people gathered in the open space in front of Bai Xiaowen's mansion. Of these 327 people, more than half of them used to be bandits, while the other half were newly joined citizens. The fighting strength of the citizens was very weak, roughly equivalent to that of a bandit servant team. The 327 people were divided into 10 teams, and each team had a captain. Bai Xiaowen spread out his spiritual power and communicated directly with these captains. Within the range of his spiritual power, no matter how far away they were, it was as if he was talking into their ears. Controlling 10 teams at the same time and also controlling his own summoned creatures. If it were anyone else, they would have long since gone insane. However, for Bai Xiaowen, it was not enough to make him feel tired. He didn't need to direct every movement of the 10 teams. He only needed to give simple instructions such as advance, retreat, and detour. Sir Lord, the brothers have already gathered. We are just waiting for your next order. Kit's style of speaking was still a bit bandit. He now considered himself the sheriff of White Stone Town, and according to the grapevine, the Lord was considering conferring the title of a few knights. Holy light above, a bandit could be conferred the title of a knight. This was something Kits had never even dreamed of. Everyone, bring a week's worth of rations and check your weapons. Issue a gag order. Our target is the west, march quickly. Bai Xiaowen ordered. This time, we are going to do a big business that will shake the northern frontier. Roar! The bandit guards had been stimulated by the gold coins, and their spirits were already high. After a day of rapid march, the army led by Bai Xiaowen could already see the outline of Red Leaf Hill's main city in the distance. Rather than a city, it was more like a stronghold. The city walls were tall and thick, and between the battlements were huge ballistas. From this angle, he could see the ant-like workers busily building the city walls. At night, In front of a sentry tower, Bai Xiaowen ordered the bandit guards to stop. From afar, he used insight on the sentries standing on top of the sentry tower. Louis Gainsborough, Standard Level 4, Race, Undead/Corpse Demon, Profession, Undead Sentry, Attributes, Strength 12, Agility 6, Constitution 10, Spirit 5, Skills, Whistle, Flare. Bai Xiaowen understood. This confirmed the information he had obtained from W07's brain. The guards of Red Leaf Hill had already been corroded by the undead plague. For example, this sentry looked no different from a normal human on the outside, but in reality, it was just a layer of human skin draped over it. Its essence was that of a corpse demon, similar to W07. It was easy to kill a level 4 common monster, but the difficult part was to not alert anyone, especially not to alert Red Leaf City. Bai Xiaowen controlled the shadow assassin and quietly crept over. The shadow assassin circled around the sentry tower and ascertained that there were a total of 3 undead sentinels in the tower. 2 people stood on top of the sentry tower, and 1 person was inside the tower. Bai Xiaowen called Bonita over and quickly formulated a tactical plan. The shadow assassin lurked inside the sentry tower, turned behind the undead sentinel, and directly activated the assassination skill, cutting off the opponent's neck with 1 slash. At the same time, Bai Xiaowen had already raised his gun. Bang! One of the undead sentinels was shot between the eyebrows. 250% critical hit damage, coupled with the armor ignore effect, undoubtedly killed the undead sentinel instantly. The death of its companion alerted the last undead sentinel. It suddenly stuffed a bone whistle into its mouth and was about to blow it. However, the moment Bai Xiaowen fired the bullet, the skeleton mage beside him also made his move. A lightning throw was shot out, and the electric force penetrated through, forcefully interrupting the undead sentinel's movements, preventing it from using the whistle skill. Bonita aimed and raised her hand to release a holy shock. Her light-type magic mastery had reached level 5, and this attack was extraordinarily accurate. In addition to the bonus effect of the holy shock on undead creatures, the last undead sentinel's HP dropped by a large chunk. The shadow assassin rushed over and stabbed the undead sentinel with its dagger, taking away its last sliver of HP. The 3 undead sentinels were all dead, and Red Leaf City didn't make any movements. After the undead sentinels died, their original appearances were revealed. They were all deformed bodies covered in wrinkles, and there was a faint stench of decay. These are the undead. They are also our goal. Bai Xiaowen lowered his voice and spoke to the bandit guards. Some of the guards had fearful looks on their faces, especially those who had just joined the territory and the bandit servants. They could do some chores, but when it came to direct combat, these residents and servants didn't have much experience. Not to mention fighting the undead. What, are you scared? Bai Xiaowen encouraged them. There are mountains of gold and silver in Red Leaf City, but they are now guarded by those damned undead. When we break into Red Leaf City and kill all the undead, you can take as much gold as you want. Until your backpack is full, your boots are full, and even your hands are full of gold. The bandits were excited. Let's go! Everyone, shut your mouths. You can't even fart. The White Stone Town guards marched under the cover of night and hid a few miles outside Red Leaf City. Bai Xiaowen led Li Shi forward quietly. The main gate of Red Leaf City was closed. Looking at the 10-meter-tall city wall and the heavy gate, Bai Xiaowen dismissed the idea of attacking by force. He could give it a try if he had an iron army, but a bunch of bandits who only knew how to fight battles were better off. Bai Xiaowen went around the main gate and stopped at a section of the city wall that was under construction. He quickly gave up control of W07, and the 4-colored talisman in his palm flashed. He chose the yellow talisman and shot it at an undead servant who was moving stones at the battlements of the city wall. Soon, a rope was lowered from the battlements of the city wall. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi climbed up the rope and climbed over the city wall. After entering Red Leaf City, the 2 of them secretly went to the main gate before they were discovered. The undead servant who was controlled by the charm of bewitchment was only level 2 and followed them quietly. There are 4 guards at the main gate. They are all undead. Bai Xiaowen used some psionic points to reveal the results of his insight. One is level 5 elite, 2 are level 4, and 1 is level 3. In addition, the city wall patrols pass by every 15 minutes. Li Shi nodded. Let's wait for the patrols to leave. Let's get this over with quickly. There were more than a dozen soldiers in the patrols, so they had to avoid them. After the patrols left, Bai Xiaowen raised his hand and released a group of summoned creatures. At the same time, the shadow assassin sneaked over and used its assassination skill to kill the weakest level 3 undead soldier. This marked the beginning of the battle. Just as the other undead soldiers were about to send out a warning signal, Bai Xiaowen directly used an indiscriminate AoE fear to intimidate them. The Wrath Claw pounced over and waved its giant claw twice. With the help of Li Shi and the other summoned creatures, the 2 level 4 undead soldiers lost all of their HP and were torn into 4 pieces. It was only then that the level 5 elite soldier in the lead woke up from its fear state. But in the face of a siege, it couldn't do anything. It didn't even send out a warning signal until it fell to the ground and died. The skeleton swordsman turned the winch and opened the gate of the fortress. A few miles away, Dr. Zombie, who had stayed with the bandits, immediately informed Kits of the news. The bandits cheered and rushed over. This was an obvious sign of lax military discipline. However, Bai Xiaowen couldn't do anything about it. He couldn't train a group of bandits into an iron army in just a few days. After a wry smile, Bai Xiaowen quickly ordered the skeleton swordsman to get into a defensive formation. At that moment, the undead soldiers of Maple City had already discovered the bandit squad charging over from afar and sounded the alarm. One by one, the patrol squads rushed towards the city gate, trying to close it. Like waves crashing into a reef, the undead soldiers and the skeleton swordsmen clashed head-on. They raised their weapons and slashed at each other. Fortunately, the area around the city gate was narrow. For skeleton swordsmen and a giant wolf wrath claw were enough to block the road and prevent the undead soldiers from coming into contact with the winch. After the bandit squad charged over, the battle lines quickly began to push back. Target: the Lord's Mansion of Maple City. After we take over the Lord's Mansion, all the gold coins will be ours. Bai Xiaowen roared. The already high morale of the bandits became even higher. With a dozen elite bandits as the arrowhead, they charged through the main road of Maple City. It was not until they reached the central square of Maple City that Bai Xiaowen's army encountered fierce resistance. A heavily armored knight riding a skeletal warhorse raised the heavy sword in his hand, his eyes seemingly burning with cold flames. He led a few riders in a countercharge. These riders were all elite terror knights. Bai Xiaowen had seen them before in the Aran realm. These elite terror knights were powerful beings that Bai Xiaowen could only look up to in the past. However, to the current Bai Xiaowen, they were nothing. The real problem was their leader. Bai Xiaowen quickly used insight. Jarek, leader level 6, race, undead/bone race, class, terror knight commander, attributes, strength 46, agility 22, constitution 50, spirit 12, skills, double strike, passive, frightening charge, blood thrall, passive, This terror knight commander Jarek had high strength and constitution, but low agility. However, with the skeletal warhorse's support, his movement speed was not slower than any agility-based boss. 12 spirit was on the low side, but this was also a common problem for most undead creatures. However, 12 points of spirit did not affect Jarek's ability at all. Out of the 3 skills that he had identified, 2 of them were passive skills that did not require spirit to activate. Moreover, their effects were explosive. Double strike: normal attacks have a 30% chance of triggering an additional attack. The additional attack ignores the target's additional armor. Blood thrall: enemies killed by the Terror Knight commander have a certain chance of becoming undead creatures to fight for him. Nay, the skeletal warhorse raised its hooves. The Terror Knight commander Jarek had already activated Frightening Charge. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. He immediately ordered his summoned creatures and shouted, "Everyone, get out of the way of the charge." However, Jarek's charge was too fast. More than 10 bandits on the way were sent flying, all of them spitting out blood. Jarek waved his heavy sword and heavily slashed at a bandit in midair. Then, the heavy sword flashed and slashed at the same spot, directly splitting the bandit in half. After the two halves of the bandit's body fell to the ground, there was a flash of blood. He quickly shed his skin and flesh and turned into a skeleton soldier with half of his body. He joined the Terror Knight Commander Jarek's camp and turned around to attack Bai Xiaowen's team. In comparison, although Bai Xiaowen's summoned creatures had avoided the charge in a straight line and avoided the fate of being sent flying, because they were too close to Jarek, they could not help but fall into the fear state that lasted for 3 seconds. Chapter 255. After Jarek, the commander of the Terror Knights, appeared, the tower on the side of the square suddenly lit up with a dazzling electric light. Then, a bolt of lightning struck down from the sky and killed a bandit. The electric shock was so strong that a few of the nearby bandits were sent flying. Immediately after that, a chain of lightning like a twisting snake exploded in the midst of the bandits, causing a few more to lose their lives. Everyone looked up in horror. On the tall tower, a majestic wizard in a red robe, holding a magic staff in his hand, was staring down coldly, like a ferocious bird staring at a flock of chickens. Lord March of Maple City. He's also a magus. Bai Xiaowen also used his insight skill and detected that the red-robed wizard on the tall tower was indeed Lord March himself. However, his race column was no longer human, but bone. However, from March's appearance, he could not see the characteristics of a bone undead creature. It seemed like he had not transformed. March was also a hero, but he was only level 5, 1 level lower than Jarek. However, as a spellcaster, he was naturally more suited for large-scale battlefields like this. His area of effect damage spells were much more threatening than the Dread Knight Commander Jarek. Ha ha ha. So many fresh specimens have arrived, this is wonderful, a gloomy and old voice sounded from the second-floor balcony of the Lord's mansion. A figure wrapped in a black robe slowly appeared. He held a withered wooden staff in his hand and waved it gently. He said slowly, "Since you're all here, then all of you shall stay." As the black-robed man waved his wooden staff, a large amount of gloomy fog surged out. All the bandits, including Bai Xiaowen, had an additional layer of negative status effects on them. Withering fog, 1 layer. All life forms within the fog will have their attributes reduced by 10%. This person is the mastermind behind the undead plague in Whitestone Hill, the one with the code name W01. Bai Xiaowen used his insight skill again. The black-robed man's name was Ebenezer, and his profession was Lich. He was a level 6 leader. 3 leaders. An endless army of undead. This was the difficulty of a heroic side quest. If one was not a heroic class, one should not even think about completing such a quest. Moreover, even if they were heroes, they would still be in great danger if their levels were not high enough. Moreover, this was a continuous mission, which was more difficult than other missions. Under normal circumstances, a few hero classes were required to form a party to have a chance of completing this hero side quest. Although Bai Xiaowen had mobilized the power of almost all the bandits in Whitestone Town, compared to the undead army and the 3 bosses in Red Leaf Hill, the difference in strength was still too obvious. The morale of the bandits came and went quickly. Not to mention the Terror Knight Commander Jarek, who was like the god of slaughter. Just the threat of the 2 powerful magi was enough to cause the morale of this motley crew to drop. Charge towards the main hall of the Lord's mansion. Bai Xiaowen's voice rang clearly in everyone's ears through his spiritual energy. He still sounded calm and calm. Don't even think about running away. We have no way out. If they surrendered, they would become undead. Only by fighting to the death can we have a chance of survival. Kits roared, "That's right. I'd rather die than become such a disgusting thing." Charge! One by one, the bandit captains shouted themselves hoarse and led their respective teams to charge towards the Lord's mansion in the north. Nay! Jarek turned his horse around and galloped forward. His great sword chopped down 2 bandits in succession, trying to block the bandits' attack route. Bai Xiaowen snorted and threw out a confinement charm, directly locking Jarek in place, unable to move for a full 7 seconds. He could only watch helplessly as the bandits rushed into the Lord's mansion like ants. A few seconds after leaving the range of the withering mist, the withering effect on the bandits dissipated, and they felt their strength returning to their bodies. Suddenly, the courage to fight for their lives returned to the hearts of this group of desperados. Kill! Charge into the Lord's mansion and kill the mastermind of the undead army. Bai Xiaowen ordered. This was the most suitable direction of attack that Bai Xiaowen had found in the chaotic battle. Of the 3 leaders, who should they attack first? Terror Knight Commander Jarek was in the central square. His skeletal warhorse was as fast as the wind, and his strength and vitality were extremely high. He was the main tank of the 3 bosses. Besieging him meant that they would have to suffer the unrestrained attacks of the other 2 magic bosses. There was no chance of victory. The Lord of Red Leaf Hill, March, was in the side tower and was too far away. Therefore, the most suitable one was this W01, Lich Ebenezer. His wide-range withering mist was an extremely disgusting crowd control skill. The most terrifying thing was that it could be stacked. They had to kill him first. Moreover, in the battle in the Lord's mansion, whether it was Terror Knight Commander Jarek or Red Leaf Hill Lord March, the support they could provide was limited. No matter how strong March's lightning magic was, it could not penetrate the walls of the Lord's mansion. If Jarek wanted to enter the Lord's mansion, he would have to dismount. As a Terror Knight commander, if he lost the speed advantage of his warhorse, how could he fight? His threat level would definitely plummet. Soon, a group of elite bandits, together with Bai Xiaowen's summoned creatures, rushed to the 2nd floor of the Lord's mansion and saw Lich Ebenezer standing on the balcony. TSK. What a bunch of ignorant fellows. Lich Ebenezer let out a mocking sigh. His body slowly floated up and was about to float in the direction of the central square. Next time, remember to run early if you can. Don't be reckless. Accompanied by Bai Xiaowen's cold voice, a sense of fear seized Lich Ebenezer's consciousness, causing his body to stiffen and fall into a state of fear for 3 seconds, unable to move. In those 3 seconds, a few elite bandits had already dashed over and blocked the Lich Ebenezer's path. 4 skeletal sword-wielding shield-wielders used the shield attack skill in unison and slammed Lich Ebenezer's body back into the hall on the 2nd floor of the Lord's mansion. In the hall on the 2nd floor, the first team of elite bandits led by Kits was already sharpening their swords. Damned mortals! Lich Ebenezer was furious. He raised his skeletal claws, and large masses of dark energy gathered. Thump! 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 Rapid footsteps sounded like the beating of war drums. The bandits tacitly opened up a gap. An agile shadow flew over and forcefully knocked Lich Ebenezer back by 2 steps, interrupting his skill. Chapter 256. We are in a very dangerous situation now. Although we have the advantage of the mansion of the Overlord to separate us from the other 2 bosses, this advantage cannot be maintained for long. We have to end this quickly. The earlier we get rid of this Lich, the easier the battle will be. Bai Xiaowen's analysis was clearly imprinted in Li Shi's mind. Therefore, Li Shi did not hesitate to use his demonic fire dance. Whoosh, the sharp blades flashed with fire, and each attack dealt additional fire damage. Lich Ebenezer's health points were rapidly decreasing. Damn it, Lich Ebenezer raised his skinny finger, and a layer of frost shield and 4 pieces of ice armor spread around his body. Frost shield, the damage received from the next 4 melee attacks will be halved, and the target will be frozen. Bai Xiaowen said in a low voice, stop. The bandits slashed at the Lich who was in the frost shield state. Their bodies suddenly froze, and a large patch of ice crystals formed on their skin. They were frozen on the spot. However, each attack would also deplete a piece of the ice armor on Lich Ebenezer's body. The 4 bandits were frozen one after another, but Lich Ebenezer's ice armor was also depleted. Lich Ebenezer's next skill, Ice Blast, was activated, and the 4 frozen bandits exploded like broken mirrors. Their blood froze into ice shards and flowed all over the ground. Lich Ebenezer had originally planned to use this skill to trick Li Shui, but his plan was quickly foiled by Bai Xiaowen's insight. Li Shui only paused for a second, and then began to attack at high speed again. All of his skills were in cooldown, and the spellcaster boss had high spirit. When surrounded by a group of melee fighters and a high DPS like Li Shui, he was quite helpless. Lich Ebenezer could only wave the wooden staff in his hand and attack. His strength was only 21 points, and compared to a level 6 boss, it could only be described as shabby. Each of his normal attacks only dealt around 20 points of damage. Bai Xiaowen didn't even need the skeleton sword shield bearers to take the hit. Any of the bandits could take Ebenezer's wooden staff head-on. The Lich Ebenezer let out a shrill cry. "Servants! Come and help your master." Outside the Lord's mansion, Jarek, the commander of the Dread Knights, suddenly activated Terror Charge and crashed into the wall of the Lord's mansion. A huge crack appeared on the wall, and it was filled with cracks. The great sword in Jarek's hand slashed horizontally and actually slashed the load-bearing pillars on the first floor of the Lord's mansion. 3 swords, 3 pillars. The front hall of the monarch's mansion collapsed. The battlefield on the second floor suddenly collapsed. The bandits, Li Shui, and Lich Ebenezer all fell into a pile of rubble, filling the air with dust. Jarek, the commander of the Dread Knights, charged toward Lich Ebenezer without stopping. He swung his greatsword and triggered another, double strike, killing another bandit. Blood rained down like rain. The other bandits were intimidated by his aura. They were fearful and retreated. However, at this moment, Bai Xiaowen suddenly stood in front of Jarek. 4 skeleton sword shield bearers pounced forward, each of them hugging one of the legs of Jarek's skeletal warhorse. The strong impact caused the 4 skeleton sword shield bearers to drag along the ground. Their health points were slowly decreasing. However, the skeleton sword shield bearers were summoned creatures that showed no fear. They continued to cling onto the horses with all their might. This self-destructive method of stalling was also very effective. Jarek's speed was suddenly reduced by more than half. The imposing manner of charging that could scare away gods and ghosts no longer existed. "What are you waiting for? Surround him!" Bai Xiaowen shouted sternly. "If he rescues the Lich, we will all die." A long howl sounded. Bai Xiaowen's group was covered in a layer of blood-red light. The group attack speed and attack power increased by 20%. This powerful buff skill filled all the bandits with strength. After activating the Howl skill, the Wolf King Wrathclaw pounced forward and used the Rend and Bite skills one after another. As a creature of the bone race, Jarek was immune to bleeding. This made the Wrathclaw less effective. However, with the Wrathclaw leading the way, the other bandits were emboldened. They howled and charged forward, swinging their machetes and swords. On the other side of the battlefield, with the Wrathclaws, Howl, Buff, Li Shui, and the others besieged the Lich Ebenezer more efficiently. The Lich's health points were rapidly decreasing like an avalanche. After 40 seconds of demonic flame dance, Li Shui ended the skill and activated the +7, demonic flame jade pendant, special effect, burst. With a loud bang, the Lich Ebenezer, whose health points were almost depleted, turned into a pile of bones. A golden treasure chest appeared above his remains. Li Shui scooped up the treasure chest with a wave of his hand. She didn't stop and hurried forward to help the others besiege Jarek. "Miss Charlotte, you're too brave." Seeing that Li Shui's health points were less than 2/3, but she continued to attack without stopping, Bonita quickly used Holy Hands to restore some of her health points. In the next second, the chain lightning from the distant tower exploded again. 2 bandits with low health points were electrocuted and turned into pitch-black skeletons. They fell to the ground. Without the cover of the Lord's mansion, Lord March, who was on the western tower, began his long-range spell bombardment again. Jarek had lost his speed advantage, but he still had the strength of a level 6 boss. His greatsword suddenly spun, and the fierce sword wind was like a sharp blade, turning into a terrifying whirlwind of flesh and blood with a radius of 4 meters and a diameter of 8 meters. After the whirlwind of flesh and blood, the 10 bandits who had been surrounding Jarek were all killed, including Bai Xiaowen's 4 skeleton shield bearers. None of them survived. This was Jarek's ultimate skill. Moreover, this ultimate skill would definitely trigger the passive effect of blood enslavement. Some of the dead bandits turned into ghouls, while others turned into skeleton soldiers. They screamed and pounced on the group, and the scene fell into chaos. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen had asked Li Shi and the Wrath Claw to retreat in advance, so they were spared. Suddenly, a ghostly figure appeared behind Jarek. It jumped out of the ruins and slashed at the back of Jarek's neck. It was the Shadow Assassin. It had taken advantage of the short pause after Jarek used his ultimate skill to suddenly appear and launch an assassination skill, intending to give Jarek a hard time. However, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky and accurately struck the Shadow Assassin. The damage of this bolt of lightning was shocking. In addition, the Shadow Assassin had a body that was vulnerable to magic damage plus 50%, so it was instantly killed. The ambush that had been brewing was now gone. We have to get rid of that mage, march. Ma Chi. Li Shi said. I'll go. Bai Xiaowen said in a low voice. Continue to surround Jarek. His psychic power is limited. He won't be able to use that skill again in a short time. Leave March to me. You alone? That's too dangerous. At least bring the Wrath Claw with you, Li Shi said. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. The Wrath Claw can only take the lead if it's here. Otherwise, the bandits' morale will collapse at any moment. It's okay. I'll deal with March alone. There was one more thing he didn't say. The Wrath Claw could protect Li Shi, who was a high damage dealer. Once Li Shi became the Terror Knight Commander Jarek's first target and was unable to dodge, Wrath Claw would be able to block the critical blow for her. Bai Xiaowen deliberately separated a part of his psychic power and connected it to Bernita. Although Bernita was only a level 4 elite, she had 3 powerful skills that could change the tide of the battle. However, Bernita's combat skills were a little difficult to complement. Bai Xiaowen had to remind her to use the skills correctly at the critical moment. In any case, Protection Seal was a very important tactical skill, and God's Grace Descends was an ultimate skill that couldn't be used easily. Without Bai Xiaowen's order, Bernita only needed to use Holy Hand to raise the HP of important allies. Anyway, it was a small skill. At this time, in the central square, the undead legion that had rushed over from all directions had suppressed the bandits and forced them to retreat. Their morale was low. Bai Xiaowen charged towards the western high tower. His figure was nimble as he dodged the interception of several Bone Clan and Corpse Demon Clan undead soldiers. He then charged towards the overlord of Red Leaf territory, March, all by himself. At this time, Lich Ebenezer was dead, and Jarek the Dread Knight Commander was entangled by the elite bandits, the Wrath Claw, and Li Shi. The command of the undead legion in the square naturally fell to March. Seeing Bai Xiaowen charging at him alone, March showed an ugly sneer on his face. He then raised his hand and suddenly gave an order. Black shadows drifted over like smoke. Their bodies were wrapped in thick mist, and they waved their sharp black claws, pouncing on Bai Xiaowen and blocking his way. These black shadows were different from the slow-moving skeletons and zombies. They belonged to another major branch of the undead species, the Soul race. Among them, there were wraiths and ghosts. There were elite and normal models. Their levels were not very high. Although Bai Xiaowen was a level 3 hero, his agility was not his strong point. He was blocked by these Soul race creatures. He opened fire, but the Soul race creatures had a racial passive ability that reduced physical damage by 50%. His gunfire had little effect. Bai Xiaowen took a breath and raised one hand. A ball of flame burned in his palm. At the same time, powerful flame energy gathered in Bai Xiaowen's right hand. Lord March, who was on the high tower, waved his magic wand and a thin bolt of lightning fell from the sky. His purpose was simple. He wanted to use the lightning spell's instant paralysis ability to interrupt Bai Xiaowen's seemingly powerful skill. However, the necklace around Bai Xiaowen's neck glowed, and a layer of holy light shield bloomed on the surface of his body. This was the active skill of Judge's Determination, a holy light shield with an absorption value of 40 points. The lightning struck, but the electric force was offset by the holy light shield. Bai Xiaowen's movements did not slow down at all. With a slap of his right hand, a turbulent wave of flames engulfed a dozen or so soul race creatures in front of him. Kusanagi sect ancient martial art, Oni Orochi. The blazing flames burned the dozen or so soul race creatures into nothingness for a full 3 seconds. Don't forget that the magic damage received by soul race creatures was increased by 50%. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Boss's move has appeared again. The bandits cried out. Their morale had recovered, and they felt that they had a chance of winning again. After clearing the path with Oni Orochi, Bai Xiaowen quickly ran over. The distance between him and the high tower shortened in a straight line. Guards! Stop him! A few tall undead soldiers rushed out from the western tower. They held swords and shields and blocked the door to the first floor of the high tower. These undead shield-bearers were clearly elites with thick skin and flesh. As a summoner, Bai Xiaowen could not kill these guys without a summoned creature by his side. Even if he used Oni Orochi again, he would not be able to kill them. However, when Bai Xiaowen ran to the bottom of the high tower, he ignored these undead shield-bearers. He crouched slightly and suddenly jumped up. With Bai Xiaowen's current 15 points of agility, he could jump about 2 to 3 meters high after a run-up. To Earth in another space-time, this height was enough to crush an Olympic champion. However, to this high tower, 2 to 3 meters was still too low. However, Bai Xiaowen's jump was extraordinarily high. He jumped 5 meters. He had already activated the active skill of the gold equipment, White Eagle's Assault, Glide. After activating it, his jumping ability would double, and the damage of his next kick would increase by 50%. Bai Xiaowen jumped to the window on the second floor. He kicked the window with all his might and rushed in. After entering, Bai Xiaowen quickly ran to the third floor of the high tower, which was the floor where Lord March was. Whether it was the undead guards blocking the door or the undead guards on the first floor of the high tower, they were all left behind by his strange move. There was no best skill, only the best user. On the balcony of the third floor, Bai Xiaowen saw March. Gunshots rang out. March had no choice but to give up on supporting Jarek, the commander of the Terror Knights, and turn around to deal with Bai Xiaowen's attack. Both of them focused on long-range attacks. In the narrow space of the high tower, there was no way to dodge, so they could only take damage from each other. March's lightning spells were indeed powerful, but Bai Xiaowen now had 20 points of vitality, 250 HP, plus 50 from the Eclipse Ruler's badge, and an additional 4 points of magic resistance from the Warlock's robe. Even if he took March's lightning head-on, the damage would not be too exaggerated. He could just barely endure it. However, March was still a level 5 boss, 2 levels higher than Bai Xiaowen. He still had the upper hand in this kind of battle that did not involve any skill. The sound of footsteps rang out. The undead guards on the ground floor and at the door were already running up the stairs. In a dozen seconds, they would appear on the balcony of the third floor and join in the siege of Bai Xiaowen. He. You are the Lord of Whitestone Town, right? I saw you once a few years ago, March said with a smile. Victory was already in his hands. The swordswoman who killed Lord Ebenezer seemed to be your sister, Charlotte. Interesting. After you and your sister die, I will resurrect you as the dead and make you my loyal servants. Bai Xiaowen calmly shot, continuously reducing March's HP. Looking at you, you haven't been completely infected by the undead plague. Why are you willing to become the minion of the undead? Of course, a mortal like you can't understand the determination of a spellcaster to pursue knowledge. Chapter 257. The sound of footsteps could be heard. 7 or 8 undead soldiers appeared from the staircase and rushed towards Bai Xiaowen. Lord March's face was filled with pride, but before his smile could bloom, it turned into panic. Bai Xiaowen put away the desert eagle, lowered his head, and charged forward like a bull. He opened his arms wide and grabbed March in a bear hug. The impact of the 18 points of strength made both of them lose their footing and fall off the balcony. Lord March was a level 5 magician. His strength was about the same as Bai Xiaowen's, but he didn't have Bai Xiaowen's level 5 grappling ability. Not to mention, the +4 effect of the Yamazaki Ruji's combat gloves also increased Bai Xiaowen's strength by 4 points when he threw and grabbed. March was held tightly and couldn't break free. He fell to the ground in a sorry state. While falling, Bai Xiaowen maintained his kneeling position on Lord March's chest. March felt a sharp pain in his sternum and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He suffered the double damage from the fall and the heavy weight. Even his sternum was almost crushed. However, as a magician, March's spirit was high. He could still think calmly under the intense pain. After falling to the ground, he rolled and tried to distance himself from Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen wouldn't let him do as he wished. He had already closed in on March like a shadow and punched at his shoulder. March instinctively dodged, but Bai Xiaowen's attack was a feint. He pulled back his fist and raised his leg. A powerful kick made March's body float. Then, Bai Xiaowen thought of a move. He used it without hesitation. Bai Xiaowen leaped up lightly and kicked his left leg sideways, kicking Ma Qi several inches off the ground. Then, Bai Xiaowen twisted his body and followed up with a kick with his right leg. March's body was kicked even higher. His whole body was numb and stiff. He was in a state where he couldn't defend himself. Kusanagi Sect Ancient Martial Arts, 75 forms, modified. Bai Xiaowen's kicks were still a little shaky. After all, he relied on his Inferno bloodline and the instincts of the Kusanagi sword to use the ancient martial arts of the Kusanagi school. He was like a young swordsman who practiced according to a sword manual. He had not reached the level of familiarity and ease like Kyo Kusanagi. If Bai Xiaowen was facing a melee opponent, even if the opponent was only a level 5 elite, he might not be able to successfully complete this move. However, he was facing Red Leaf Hill's Lord March, a powerful spellcaster who was weak in close combat. As a lord and a noble magus, March had always thought that using swords and fists to fight was the way of barbarians, and he disdained to do so. Moreover, he was surrounded by a large number of guards, so he didn't have the chance to practice his fists. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen's rusty martial arts moves were able to hit Ma Qi more smoothly. Thud. Bai Xiaowen landed lightly on the ground. When he saw Ma Qi floating in the air, he used Dark Whisk without hesitation. The flame swam close to the ground and wrapped around Ma Qi's body. The explosion caused Ma Qi to cry out in pain and fly away. Bai Xiaowen sighed inwardly. If it was Kyo Kusanagi, he would be able to follow up the 75 forms, modified, with a deadly Orochi move. However, Bai Xiaowen couldn't do that. In the end, other than the shortcomings of strength and dexterity, the proficiency of the skills was also a big problem. Bai Xiaowen quickly rushed over, not giving March any time to catch his breath. Bai Xiaowen displayed his level 5 fighting ability, beating March to the point where he couldn't stop complaining. Ma Qi hurriedly controlled the undead guards to protect his master. However, his guards had already climbed up to the 3rd floor of the tower and were coming down from the stairs. It would take a few more seconds for them to arrive. Under Bai Xiaowen's beating, it was difficult for Ma Qi to even use his skills. He could only wait for a few more seconds. These few seconds were extremely long for Ma Qi. If it were any other melee awaken, they would never be able to force Ma Qi to this point. Ma Qi only needed to use a crowd control skill to restrain his opponent. After distancing himself, he could cast a powerful spell to kill his opponent. However, Bai Xiaowen's sincere heart was already stacked to the maximum, so he had a 50% immunity to crowd control skills. His heroic mode wouldn't be at a disadvantage against Ma Qi. His spirit attribute wasn't much lower than Ma Qi's, so the duration of his crowd control skills was extremely short. It was impossible for him to distance himself. It was Ma Chi's bad luck to encounter Bai Xiaowen, a melee awakened who specialized in spirit. When the undead guards appeared at the entrance of the tower and were about to rush over, Bai Xiaowen suddenly took out a bronze token and shook it slightly. The token turned into smoke and dissipated. A tall and mighty bronze statue appeared at the entrance of the tower, blocking Ma Chi's path. Bai Xiaowen used the last use of the bronze statue token without hesitation. The undead guards attacked with all their might. Although they were elites, as Ma Chi's guards, their specialty was defense and protection. Attacking was only their weakness. The bronze statue had thick skin and thick flesh, and it had an area of effect skill. It was really the best choice to block the door. Moreover, the bronze statue enjoyed the 20% attribute bonus of all summoned creatures from Bai Xiaowen's spirit master. In addition, Bai Xiaowen's spirit was much stronger than before, so the bonus effect was even more powerful. It was afraid of magic damage, and its natural metal skin had extremely high defense against physical attacks. With the undead guard's attack power, it would definitely take a long time to take down the bronze statue. Bai Xiaowen seized the time and gave Lord Ma Chi a memorable fighting lesson. Ma Chi's HP slowly decreased. On the other side, the battle in the ruins of the Lord's mansion's front hall was even more intense. Without the threat of Ma Chi's long-range casting, Jarek, the Terror Knight commander, was suddenly put into a passive position. Although his skills were powerful, his spirit was limited. After using his ultimate move, he could only rely on the two passive skills, Double Strike and Blood Enslavement, to fight. However, the negative consequences of Bai Xiaowen's departure were obvious. Jarek, the Terror Knight commander, had 46 points of strength and could crush almost everyone. Although his attack frequency was slow, each strike was terrifying. The bandits that were hit by his sword were either killed or heavily injured. After killing a few hot-blooded and fearless bandits, the others were frightened. When they attacked, they often slowed down by half a beat, as if they were not putting in effort. If Bai Xiaowen was here, with his strong control of the overall situation, he could easily notice this sign and take appropriate measures to boost the morale of the bandits, making them fight with their lives on the line. However, those who stayed, whether it was Li Shui or Bonita, did not have such talent. As for Zombie Doctor, since the beginning of the battle, Bai Xiaowen had called him back. In such a dangerous battlefield, one more zombie would not be of much use, and the loss of his accidental death was quite unbearable. After the bandits became fearful, Li Shui, who had been fiercely attacking, undoubtedly attracted Jarek's attention. He slashed down with his heavy sword twice in a row, attacking Li Shui, making Li Shui look quite miserable. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen was also paying attention to this battlefield, and immediately ordered Bonita to use the Holy Seal of Protection. A layer of holy light enveloped Li Shui. Jarek swung his greatsword and landed on the holy light. However, it was as if he had struck a layer of extremely tough and thick leather, and his sword slid to the side. Two words appeared above Li Shui's head, immune. However, the Holy Seal of Protection only lasted for a few seconds. Then, Bai Xiaowen's voice, supported by his spirit, sounded in Kit's ears. "Kits, make those maggots hold on. Ma Chi, that trash, can only hold on for a minute at most. I'll be right back after I kill him." Kits received Bai Xiaowen's spirit message, and his confidence was greatly boosted. He shouted, "Brothers, the Lord says that Ma Chi is almost done for. We're definitely going to win this battle. Keep your eyes peeled and protect Miss Charlotte. If anything happens to her, we'll all be skinned alive by the Lord." The bandits, who had been in a state of panic, immediately came back to their senses. Yes, no matter who died, the Lord's sister could not die. Hearing that Ma Chi was about to die, the bandits' morale was boosted. Although they were still a bit timid when facing Jarek, at least they performed much better than before. They all brandished their swords and knives, adding more wounds to Jarek's body. In fact, the situation on Bai Xiaowen's side was far from optimistic. At the moment, the guards of the undead army still had the upper hand in the central square. Although they were rather far from the western tower, many undead guards still hurried over at Lord March's summons. Once Bai Xiaowen was surrounded by the undead guards, Ma Chi would be able to free himself and cast a few powerful spells, which would be enough to empty Bai Xiaowen's life. Moreover, even without the interference of the undead guards, Bai Xiaowen wouldn't be able to finish off Ma Chi within a minute if he suppressed him and beat him up wildly. The reason he'd told Kits that was to give the bandits confidence in victory and raise their morale. In that situation, if Bai Xiaowen had shouted that the situation on his side was bad and forced Kits and the others to help, it might have had the opposite effect. Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath and communicated with Li Shi with his spirit. "It's time, use that move." Li Shi was a bit surprised. She quickly realized that the situation on Bai Xiaowen's side wasn't optimistic. If the situation was optimistic, Bai Xiaowen wouldn't let Li Shi use that move no matter what, that precious one-time trump card. Li Shi pursed her lips and nodded. A diamond-shaped mark on her right hand flickered with light and was slightly hot. Suddenly, a powerful battle intent awakened in Li Shi's body. Her right hand was blazing hot as she held the refined rapier. It felt connected to her body by blood, as if it was an extension of her arm. A notification came from the spirit realm: "You've activated Zhao Yun's mark. You can temporarily display part of the strength and battle techniques of the Lord-level fierce general Zhao Yun, limited by your attributes. Duration, 30 seconds. Your advanced specialty, close combat, has temporarily been raised to level 10. Your advanced specialty, one-handed sword technique, has temporarily been raised to level 10. Your advanced specialty, shooting, has temporarily been raised to level 10. You've temporarily obtained an advanced specialty, pole-arm weapon, has temporarily been raised to level 10. You've temporarily obtained an advanced specialty, horsemanship." After a series of battle ability notifications, the most important notification appeared: "You've temporarily obtained an unparalleled skill, combo. Your successful melee attack will cause the target to be stunned and have a chance to be airborne. While in the air, each of your attacks will generate combo points. After airborne, the accumulated combo points will explode and cause heavy damage to the target." Li Shi took a deep breath. There were too many notifications, and she couldn't remember them all. At this moment, she could only follow the guidance of the powerful battle intent in her heart. She stretched out her left hand and held the refined rapier with both hands instead of one hand. Jarek swung his rapier at her, and Li Shi took half a step back. The tip of the rapier almost brushed past the tip of her nose. However, Li Shi didn't change her expression at all. She swung her rapier with both hands and slashed 3 inches away from the tip of Jarek's rapier. Jarek's eyes flashed with a hint of confusion. Under the influence of inertia, his heavy body flew off the skeletal war horse. He didn't understand. How could this girl, who looked so weak, have so much strength to throw him off the horse? In fact, Li Shi's strength was only 16 points, which was only 1/3 of Jarek's strength. She was able to throw Jarek off the horse mainly because of Jarek's strength. She had only used her own skills. However, after Jarek fell to the ground, he rolled and quickly got up. He didn't suffer any injuries. After all, skills were skills. This time, Jarek had lost his footing and fell off the horse. It was different from being hit by a throwing skill. If he was hit by a throwing skill and fell to the ground, his entire body would be paralyzed by the power. He wouldn't be able to defend himself and would suffer a lot of damage from the fall. However, Li Shi's aim was only to throw Jarek off the horse. She moved forward with small steps. She changed her posture from holding the rapier with both hands to holding the rapier with one hand. The confusion in Jarek's eyes disappeared. He roared angrily and swung his rapier. Li Shi had already dodged in advance. The rapier pierced into the ground, and it was half a foot deep. Li Shi followed up with a flick. At the same time, she kicked Jarek's calf with her black leather shoes. Jarek's body suddenly floated in the air. Li Shi's eyes flashed. She then began her familiar attack rhythm. Stabbing, consecutive slashing, stabbing, judgment dagger, combo *6. Combo *7. Combo *8. The other bandits saw the opportunity and rushed over. They waved their machetes and swords at Jarek. "All of you, back off," Li Shi said coldly. There was an inexplicable sense of authority in her voice. The bandits were originally bold and reckless. However, after seeing Li Shi's exquisite swordsmanship and her ability to hang up the level 6 boss, the Terror Knight commander Jarek, they lost a lot of confidence. They didn't dare to argue and quietly retreated. The combo was fixed at 10, and the damage dealt was 57 points. One of Jarek's arms was chopped off. There was only white bone at the cut, and no blood flowed out. Chapter 258. Jarek, the commander of the Dread Knights, roared angrily. His right arm had been chopped off, and he could no longer use his fearsome two-handed heavy sword. His threat was greatly reduced. Li Shi stepped forward and dodged Jarek's left fist. He turned the hilt of his sword and elbowed Jarek's chest, causing him to lose his balance. Just as Jarek was about to fall forward, Li Shi followed up with a slide kick. At the same time, her rapier delicately hooked onto his breastplate. With a forceful lift, Jarek was once again thrown into the air. The sound of chi-chi-chi was heard again. It was like a windmill spinning at high speed. Each strike was faster than the last. This time, the number of consecutive strikes reached 7, and the damage was 24 points. However, because the attacks were concentrated on one point, Jarek's other arm was still chopped off. Not only were the bandits stunned, but even Bai Xiaowen, who saw this scene from the perspective of the Wrath Claw, was inexplicably surprised. Zhao Yun is very powerful, Bai Xiaowen is clear on this point. After Li Shi activates Zhao Yun's imprint, she will definitely be able to erupt with a considerable amount of strength. Bai Xiaowen has also calculated this point. According to his prediction, Li Shi should be able to cooperate with the bandits to kill Jarek, the commander of the Dread Knights. However, it seemed that there was no need for the bandits to act. Li Shi alone was enough to get rid of Jarek. From this, one could get a glimpse of the Lord-ranked General Zhao Yun's strength. It could only be described as terrifying. Zhao Yun might not be as explosive as Guan Yu, but he was strong in a prolonged battle. With exquisite combo skills, the longer Zhao Yun fought, the higher his chances of winning. From this, it could be seen that the word wind in Li Shi's wind and thunder combo was applicable to Zhao Yun. His attacks were like the wind, dense and pervasive. At this time, there were still 10 seconds before Zhao Yun's mark disappeared. Within those 10 seconds, Li Shi launched another combo and chopped off one of Jarek's legs, causing him to slump to the ground. Although the duration of Zhao Yun's imprint had ended, Jarek had become a toothless tiger and no longer had the ability to resist. Li Shi, stay and kill Jarek. Everyone else, with the Wolf King Wrath Claw as the vanguard, kill your way to the Western High Tower. After we kill March, the undead army's commander, and we'll win. Bai Xiaowen's voice transmitted through psychic power, Li Shi, Beria, Bonita, Kits, and the others. Kits stared blankly for a moment, and then complained inwardly, didn't Boss Suzerain say that March was about to die? Now, 1 minute, Kits, why does it feel like Kits out? However, Kits was a smart man. After his initial shock, he quickly raised the greatsword in his hand and shouted, "Brothers, charge with me. Support the Lord." Under the lead of the Wrath Claw, a dozen elite bandits formed an arrow formation, followed by a group of ordinary bandits, servants, and civilian guards. They killed their way through the waves of undead guards and charged towards the Western High Tower. At this time, Bai Xiaowen was surrounded by the undead guards. Lord March finally put some distance between them, panting heavily as he began to cast a spell. Deterrence. Bai Xiaowen's deterrence had finally finished its cooldown of 4 minutes and 30 seconds. He activated it immediately, not only interrupting Lord March's spell, but also putting the other undead guards into a state of fear. Seizing this opportunity, Bai Xiaowen rushed out of the encirclement of the undead guards. However, he was not in a hurry to meet up with the other bandits. Instead, he rushed in front of March and used the same move, modified from the 75th style, kicking March in the direction of the Wrath Claw. Before March's body landed on the ground, the Wrath Claw had already roared and pounced on him. Ultimate suppression skill activated. And then, there was no and then. During the 3-second suppression, March had to constantly endure the ravages of a group of elite bandits, as well as by Xiaowen, who had activated his continuous shooting mode. He was a fragile spellcaster to begin with, and more than half of his HP had been depleted by Xiaowen. How could he withstand so much damage? Damn it. I was promised eternal life. March raised his hand with difficulty, but it fell powerlessly. This evil Lord Wizard, who had opened his territory to the spreader of the plague and willingly turned into a lich, had finally died. After losing 3 leaders in succession, the undead army of Red Leaf Hill was like a headless fly, fighting for themselves. The undead outside Red Leaf City even began to flee. Driven by their thirst for life, they spread towards the vast villages of Red Leaf Hill. However, the undead in the periphery were all weak servants. They were just enough to give the strong farmers and adventurers in the villages something to do. As for the elite undead soldiers in the central square, they had become a sheet of loose sand. Under Bai Xiaowen's unified command, they were easily divided, surrounded, and annihilated one by one. After wiping out the main force of the undead army, Bai Xiaowen ordered the 10 guards to spread out and sweep the entire city. Soon, a notification sounded. You have controlled more than 75% of Red Leaf City. Please choose, occupy, abandon, or destroy Red Leaf City. Special prompt, you will be questioned by the Empire for your actions in attacking Red Leaf City. Abandoning Red Leaf City will subject you to general questioning. As long as you provide a reasonable reason and obtain the approval of more than half of the lords in the northern frontier, you will be exempt from the Empire's interference. Destroying Red Leaf City will subject you to important questioning. You will need to provide a reasonable reason and obtain the understanding of the Empire's special envoy. Only then will you be exempt from the Empire's interference. Occupying Red Leaf City will subject you to strict questioning. Even if you provide a reasonable reason, the Empire may still interfere and force you to leave this territory. Bai Xiaowen thought for a moment. These 3 options are also very particular. No matter what, attacking Red Leaf City is a violation of the Empire's laws. Abandoning Red Leaf City can reduce the crime to the minimum, but there are no benefits. Destroying Red Leaf City can loot a bunch of valuables, but the crime will be more serious. Finally, occupying Red Leaf City is tantamount to annexing another lord's territory by force. It will definitely attract the Empire's attention. Bai Xiaowen didn't think for long before choosing the occupy option. The Empire's special envoy? Interference? It doesn't matter, I have people above me. As for who is above me, that will depend on the actual situation. Who is more interested in the threat of the plague of the dead? Whether it's Archbishop Arlo or Prince Nicholas, I'm sure they'll be willing to pay a good price for this hero-level side mission. However, what puzzled Bai Xiaowen was that even though W01 had been killed and the lair of the plague of the dead in Whitestone territory had been eradicated, the first step of the hero-level side mission, the truth of the plague, still hadn't been completed. Bai Xiaowen thought about it carefully and immediately ordered his bandits to capture a few undead slaves from Red Leaf territory and cast a bewitching spell on them. I see, Bai Xiaowen opened his eyes after reading the memory fragments of an undead slave. He led Li Shi and the others to the collapsed mansion, bypassing the ruins of the front hall and arriving at the backyard. Bai Xiaowen squatted in front of a 1-meter-wide manhole cover and turned the turntable on the cover. With a soft rumble, the manhole cover spun open, revealing a staircase leading down. Bai Xiaowen led Bernita and Li Shi down the staircase to the underground. Wow! What a huge underground palace! Bernita exclaimed in amazement. In front of them was an underground hall with many incubation containers. When he walked closer, he could see that the containers were filled with some light green liquid. There were humanoid test subjects soaking in them, and all of them were naked. On the wide experiment table, there were many instruments and thick stacks of documents. These were all experiment records. Judging from the dates, this place had been the research site of the undead plague for nearly a year. A notification from the spirit realm came. You've discovered the Undead Plague Underground Research Center in Red Leaf City. Hero Side Mission Step 1, The Truth of the Plague, completed. Evaluation, A, excellent. Please head to the Blackrock Fortress and find Archbishop Arlo or Prince Nicholas to receive the mission reward and proceed to the next step of the mission. Bai Xiaowen's experience bar increased greatly, quickly increasing to 94%. Before attacking Red Leaf City, his experience bar was only a little more than 60%. This Hero Side Mission Step 1, Rank B, increased his experience bar by more than 30%. Leveling up from level 3 to level 4 was a threshold, and the experience required was greatly increased. Many Awaken would have to go through several Spirit Realm explorations to level up. This showed that the rewards of a Hero Side mission were very generous. This was only the combat experience reward. There were 3 boss treasure chests, a dozen elite treasure chests, and more than 20 normal treasure chests waiting for Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi to open. Although the bandits had participated in the attack and the treasure chests were unavoidably overpriced, the number of spiritual points alone was enough to make them rich. Moreover, when they turned in the mission, they would definitely receive a handsome reward. Just the thought of it made them excited. Li Shi's combat experience bar also increased to 89%. Due to the difference in combat experience required to level up, her leveling speed would definitely catch up to and surpass Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen suddenly thought of something and summoned Dr. Zombie again. Hey, can you not summon me back in the future? As a zombie with independent consciousness and personality, I really dislike the summoning space where I can't do anything. It's like confinement. Dr. Zombie's first sentence was a complaint. This is for your own good. You probably don't know how tragic today's battle was. The 4 skeleton swordsmen and shadow assassins were all killed. Dozens of the bandit army I recruited also died. If I didn't summon you back, I'm afraid you'd have to wait 12 hours to revive, Bai Xiaowen said. However, after Dr. Zombie looked around, he had already forgotten about Bai Xiaowen's words. Wow, what did I just see? A complete underground research institute. Although the equipment here is very magical, the materials are relatively primitive, and there are no sophisticated instruments. It's enough. This is my research institute. To be exact, it's mine. At least in terms of property rights, Bai Xiaowen corrected him. However, I'm generous enough to give you the right to use it. Dr. Zombie pursed his lips. I think that there should be some progress in the research of the undead plague here, right? Bai Xiaowen pointed at a thick stack of documents on the experiment table. I just took a look. All the experimental records are here. Dr. Zombie became excited again and began to flip through the experimental records. Oh, so the purpose of this research institute was to improve the virus of the undead plague and make it more contagious, Dr. Zombie murmured. And to further research on the undead plague after the infection mutates. My goodness, the previous owner of the research institute actually wanted to create a giant infected body. The scientific name is Pustules Giant. What a genius idea. This research institute is a concentration camp for evil. Burita said angrily. It was rare that she didn't stutter. We should report this to the Archbishop and ask him to purify this place with holy fire. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. Stupid. The purpose of exploring the darkness is to protect the light. Every page here was precious information about the enemy. Only an idiot would burn it all to the ground. Only by understanding the secret of the undead plague can we create the antidote to save the humans who have the virus in their bodies but haven't broken out yet. Bonita paused for a second. Then let's say you're right. I'm not stupid. I'm just angry. Bai Xiaowen looked at Dr. Zombie. What do you think? How long will it take you to create the antidote to the undead plague? Dr. Zombie thought for a while and shook his head. It's very difficult. Even if I'm a top-notch science erudite, it will take me at least 3 days to finish reading these experimental reports and grasp their progress. Only then can I start making the antidote. That's even more uncertain. If it's short, it might take a week. If it's long, it might even take a month or two without any results. Too slow. You're a zombie now. You don't need to rest. Create the antidote in 5 days. This is my second order this month, Bai Xiaowen said. If you can do it, you can skip the third order this month. TSK. Dr. Zombie curled his lips and muttered, "That's why I hate laymen. Layman bosses, layman bureaucrats, layman investors, huh? What's wrong?" Bai Xiaowen looked up. "Nothing. I will try my best to complete this task," Dr. Zombie said, and then started to drive people away. "Do you have any other instructions? If not, I'm going to start working. By the way, remember to bring more experimental samples." "Samples?" Bai Xiaowen was slightly surprised. "Human samples," Dr. Zombie said casually. "From human samples that have just been infected, to samples that have been infected for 3 days, samples that have been infected for 7 days, and samples that are on the verge of mutation. Only with sufficient samples can I grasp the characteristics of the plague of the dead as soon as possible. How do I identify them?" Bai Xiaowen asked. "Can't you do it through that holy light plague detector?" Dr. Zombie said. "The intensity of the green light seems to be different depending on the time the virus has been dormant. If you think it's too troublesome, you can bring me healthy samples. I'll infect them temporarily and increase the dose to compare the results." "That's enough. I'll get you enough samples. Without my order, you're not allowed to experiment on healthy humans," Bai Xiaowen warned. Bonita looked at Dr. Zombie as if she was looking at a pile of sh*t to a pile of sh*t. She muttered, "I don't want to stay here." Then, she left the Underground Research Institute in a hurry. Chapter 259. Maple City's Underground Research Institute. In front of Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi, there was a pile of treasure chests. Among them, there were more than 20 normal-level bronze treasure chests, 7 elite-level silver treasure chests, and the most eye-catching were the 3 gold treasure chests, which were the legacies of the 3 undead army leaders. The first one Bai Xiaowen opened was Lord March's gold treasure chest. After touching the treasure chest, Bai Xiaowen received a notification. "Your team's contribution to killing Lord March of the Red Leaf Hill is 81%. The rest of the damage is caused by the spiritual world storyline characters. The loot score will be reduced accordingly. Combat rating, B. You've received 2 draw chances that won't be empty. You have received 4,050 psionic points." Bai Xiaowen breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the score did not drop too much. Lord March of the Red Leaf Hill was a level 5 leader, and Bai Xiaowen was a level 3 hero. A level B score was relatively normal. Before drawing the loot card, Bai Xiaowen also received a special item from March's treasure chest. Fief Order, Red Leaf Hill. This is the Gorse Empire's fief contract passed down from generation to generation in Red Leaf Hill. This item is guaranteed to be dropped and will not be included in the loot draw list. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi each drew one. Bai Xiaowen drew a 4-star equipment enhancement card. He had drawn this thing before. It was very useful when he was trying to upgrade his equipment to +7. Of course, this thing was very useful for rich awakened ones. However, it was basically useless for beginner awakened ones who lacked psionic points. Fortunately, it could be traded and could retain its value to a certain extent. Li Shi drew a longsword. Red Leaf Hill's Glorious Longsword, Grade, Hero, Gold, Equipment Position, One-handed, Equipment Requirements, 15 base Strength, 20 base Agility. Attribute, Additional Attack Power 816, Skill, Blood Drain, drain the enemy's blood and deal magic damage equivalent to the user's level *5. Heal the user's HP by the same amount. Durability description, the first generation of Hongyi territory used this sword to open up new territories. However, in the hands of the last generation of Hongyi territory, it was merely a ceremonial sword. This sword is so strong. Li Shi's eyes widened when he saw the additional skill, Blood Drain. Damn it, How could a magician like March drop such a good item? I didn't kill Ma Chi, so I can't pick it up. What a pity. Li Shi shook his head repeatedly, stroking his towering chest and sighing. Bai Xiaowen carefully looked at the name of the sword. His eyes also widened. Wait a minute. Bai Xiaowen patted Li Shi's shoulder. Don't be sad, look at this sword again. What's so special about it? No. The more I look at it, the sadder I get. Li Shi sighed. Are you stupid? There's no indication of bound after pickup at the back of the sword. Bai Xiaowen knocked Li Shi's head. Moreover, there's no indication of bound after equipping either. This is a top-grade gold equipment that doesn't need to be bound. Li Shi exclaimed in surprise. He carefully looked at the Red Leaf Lord's glorious longsword. There was indeed no indication of binding at the back. Bai Xiaowen directly assigned the sword to Li Shi. It was not until Li Shi received the Spirit Realm prompt that he recovered from his surprise. You've obtained the gold equipment, Red Leaf Lord's glorious longsword. Great, I can equip this sword with my right hand and put the original, refined rapier, with my left hand, Li Shi said with a smile. There were two types of weapons, two-handed weapons, one needed to use both hands to fight, and one-handed weapons. Generally speaking, one-handed weapons had lower attack power than two-handed weapons of the same quality in a plane of the same difficulty. However, there were also advantages to equipping a one-handed weapon. One could equip a light or medium shield with one's offhand to block the enemy's attacks. Many tank-type professions would do this. If a two-handed weapon was equipped, the attack speed would be slower, but the damage would be higher, resulting in a higher chance of crippling or insta-killing. In addition, skills like Whirlwind Slash had a wider range and higher damage. Lastly, two-handed weapons were more convenient to parry the enemy's close-range attacks. Therefore, they were the best choice for a violent warrior. Agility-based warriors or assassins had another option, which was to dual-wield a one-handed weapon. Just like Li Shi, one could use a one-handed weapon in each hand to attack. By doing so, one would sacrifice part of one's defense, one's ability to parry attacks would be weaker, and the chances of success would be lower. Moreover, the accuracy of one's attacks would decrease, that is, the percentage of attacks that were not dodged, parried, or blocked by the enemy, and the accuracy of one's vital points would decrease. These decreased statistics would not be shown on the battle interface, but the impact would be real. However, dual-wielding a weapon also had its advantages, and that was the increase in attack speed. Every level of combat could increase one's attack speed by 5%. With Li Shi's current level 5 single-handed swordsmanship, if he dual-wielded a one-handed weapon, his attack speed would increase by 25%. The first attack he launched on the target would cause 2 waves of damage. Although there would be negative effects such as a decrease in hit rate and vital point attack rate, that was only for the enemy in their normal state. If the enemy was hit by a control skill and became a stationary target that could not be resisted or dodged, these negative effects would not exist. Therefore, Li Shi's choice of dual-wielding a weapon was inevitable. Next, Bai Xiaowen opened Lich Abazel's golden chest. The team's kill contribution rate was 73%. Li Shi's damage output was off the charts, reaching 39% due to the activation of Devil's Fire Dance. This was also the first time that her kill contribution rate exceeded Bai Xiaowen's in a boss battle. Although the storyline character Bandit's 27% kill contribution rate decreased the battle rating, Lich Abazel was a level 6 boss. Compared to Lord March, his battle rating was higher. After going back and forth, the battle rating remained at B and did not drop. It was worth mentioning that Lich Abazel also had a special item that was guaranteed to drop, Undead Plague Plan. Bai Xiaowen opened the plan and skimmed through it. It was more or less as he had guessed. It was quite grim. The residents of Red Leaf Hill, whether in Red Leaf City or in the villages outside of the city, were all infected with the undead plague virus. Once it broke out, the entire Red Leaf Hill would become a paradise for the undead. Chapter 260. This Plague of the Dead plan can be used as evidence when submitting the mission. I think it can be exchanged for something like merit points, Bai Xiaowen said. It can allow the higher-ups to clearly understand the severity of the Plague of the Dead and formulate corresponding countermeasures. After putting away the plan, Bai Xiaowen and Li Shui each drew one of Lich Ebenezer's golden chests. Li Shui drew an ancient scroll. Withering Fog Scroll, S-grade item. After use, create a fog with a radius equal to the user's mental strength *10 meters. All living things within the withering fog will be stacked with layers of withering over time. Each layer of withering effect will reduce all attributes by 10%. Maximum of 5 layers. There was a small line of words behind the scroll. To use this scroll, one must have the meditation ability to advance to level 7. S-grade items are indeed very powerful. Unfortunately, I need to advance to level 7 meditation, and I don't meet the requirements to use it now, Bai Xiaowen said. Bai Xiaowen's meditation ability was now at level 4. He could break through to level 5 in a short period of time. By then, he would be able to reach level 6 under the title of Strongest Scholar. However, he was still one level away. Training his combat ability required a lot of time. He could not rush it. However, Bai Xiaowen was very talented when it came to meditation. He was an awakened who specialized in mental power, and he also had a super brain. The breadth and duration of each meditation far exceeded that of ordinary mages, so he could improve very quickly. This Withering Fog Scroll was most suitable for large-scale battles. Once used well, it could change the outcome of a battle. Then, Bai Xiaowen drew the last loot card from Lich Ebenezer's chest. With a flash of golden light, the image of a book appeared on the front of the card. "Is this a skill book?" Li Shui asked. After looking at it clearly, he shook his head and smiled. "All right, it's a piece of equipment." I was wrong. It was a book-shaped equipment called the Demonic Book of Ravings. Demonic Book of Ravings binds after pickup, rarity, hero, gold, equipment position, offhand, prerequisite, none, attribute, spirit +3, additional skill, ravings, select a target, regardless of friend or foe, roll the die, and cast a random spell on the target. The more points you roll, the higher the star level of the spell. Cooldown, 24 hours. Durability description, depends on skill. This equipment is a little special. It looks pretty good. It adds attributes and skills. These are the characteristics of a super gold equipment, Li Shui said. It's just that the additional skills are a little confusing. Bai Xiaowen read the words for the additional skill twice with a strange expression on his face. This raving skill, under normal circumstances, it's best not to use it. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. There are too many uncertainties. What if the enemy is randomly cast a buff spell? Choosing the target first and then casting a random spell is too much of a scam. Li Shui understood. The additional skill of the Demonic Book of Ravings was a random spell that was not controlled by the wearer. For example, if Bai Xiaowen selected an ally as a target and wanted to roll a buff spell, what if he rolled a pyroblast spell? A fireball the size of a washbasin was no joke. If the enemy was selected as a target, if a buff such as King's Blessing or Holy Protection was rolled out, it would be quite devastating. Sure enough, a super gold necklace like the Adjudicator's Determination was something that could only be found by chance. It's okay. This offhand item can be used as a normal gold equipment with +3 spirit. It's not bad. Bai Xiaowen was more open-minded. In a critical situation, you can select the enemy as a target and try your luck. Generally speaking, the ratio of damage and weakening spells is much higher than buff spells. Bai Xiaowen's Desert Eagle was a one-handed long-range weapon, so he could equip the Demonic Book of Ravings. However, when using the continuous shooting, additional skill of the Desert Eagle, if his strength was lower than 20 points, he would need to use both hands to hold the gun. At that time, he would have to unequip his offhand equipment. In a combat state, switching weapons and equipment was not a problem. However, when switching weapons and equipment, he would usually be distracted for a while. If he did so in a fierce battle, he might be killed by monsters. The treasure chests of the two bosses had been opened. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi were both very lucky. The treasure chests that were lightly filled with loot had dropped more than the average value. Finally, there was the treasure chest of the Terror Knight commander, Jarek. The team's kill contribution rate was 89%, and Li Shi accounted for 64%, which was surprisingly high. It had to be said that Zhao Yun's mark was really powerful. Jarek had been riding on the skeletal warhorse, slashing and slashing. Everyone's attacks had done little damage. It was only when Li Shi activated Zhao Yun's mark that he knocked Jarek off his horse and chopped off his arms and legs in 30 seconds that Jarek could only be slaughtered. Therefore, it was normal for Li Shi to have 64% of the kill contribution rate. Moreover, Jarek's combat rating was A, which meant that he had 3 draws. You have received a special item, Jarek's Journal. This item will definitely drop. It will not be included in the loot list. An old journal appeared in front of him. The style was somewhat similar to Ian's journal. What's this? Li Shi was curious. No need to look. I've already guessed it. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. Jarek should be Ian's comrade, a knight of the Black Vanguard Adjudicator Unit. He might have discovered the problem in Maple City and came here to find out the truth. However, he was tricked by Lord March and Lich Ebenezer. He was infected with the necromancy plague and became the Terror Knight commander. Li Shi skimmed through the journal. What Bai Xiaowen said was true. Fortunately, Bonita left. Otherwise, she would be sad. Li Shi sighed. Bai Xiaowen also had an indescribable feeling in his heart. He shook his head and said, well, this is not reality. It's the spiritual realm. Let's see what's in Jarek's treasure chest. The 3 draws were used one after another. A notification came from the spiritual realm. You have received a special item, Oath of Shattering. You have received a special item, Death's Cry. You have received an elite blue equipment, Knight's Wrist Guard. Oath of Shattering was another temporary party creation item. It was still limited to level 6 and below awakened. It could be formed into a 2-person party to explore the spiritual realm. No matter what, the value of this item was no less than a gold equipment. Of course, the value of a gold equipment might not necessarily be the same. Death's Cry, Grade A item. After use, summon an elite Terror Knight to fight for you. Lasts for 600 seconds. The elite Terror Knight has charge, sweep, and enslave skills. Current number of uses, 2 halves. The value of this item was close to that of the bronze token. It was extremely effective when used at the right time. Needless to say, this kind of summoning item was most suitable for Bai Xiaowen. The last item, the Knight's Wrist Guard, was a blue equipment. It only had one simple attribute, +2 strength. This attribute was quite useful. Li Shi happened to have a use for it. After the boss treasure chests were opened, it was time to open the elite treasure chests. However, these elite treasure chests were filled with water. The killing contribution from the bandits usually accounted for 40% to 80%. The reason for this was that Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi's focus was on the 3 bosses. Against the elite undead soldiers and elite terror knights, they basically killed a few of them when they were passing by. It was reasonable that the contribution points were low. There were so many elite treasure chests, but only 2 pieces of blue equipment were opened. The Knight's Standard Greatsword was a 2-handed weapon. Its attack power was quite high. The additional 15% parry rate was its highlight. However, its attack speed was too slow. The second piece of equipment was called the Smooth Bone Shield. It was a light shield that could block a certain amount of physical damage. It was given to Li Shi as a backup. The normal treasure chests were even more lackluster. They were basically small money bags filled with psionic points. After opening the treasure chests, the 2 of them had nearly 20,000 psionic points. The psionic points that Bai Xiaowen had lost from using Orochi were basically recovered. his total psionic points had returned to a little over 60,000. The excitement and thrill of continuously drawing the lottery refreshed the two of them after the battle. Let's go! There's still a lot to do. They'd already taken over Maple City, but the city was still far from being pacified. The remaining undead army soldiers had lost their commander and were fleeing in all directions. After witnessing this terrifying battle, the ordinary human residents of Maple City were in a state of great panic. Yes, Bai Xiaowen had advanced all the way to the Liege's mansion and faced the undead army. However, this didn't mean that all the residents of Maple City were undead. After all, there were tens of thousands of people in Maple City. If they were all undead, even if each of them threw a bone, they would be able to drown Bai Xiaowen's men. Normally, the undead army soldiers would still disguise themselves as humans to maintain the fragile facade of Maple City. However, after Bai Xiaowen invaded Maple City, the undead army tore off their disguises. The residents of Maple City were already frightened by the bandits under Bai Xiaowen's command. Now that they saw the guards they were familiar with turn into undead monsters, they panicked and didn't know what to do. Many of the residents of Maple City chose to run. In fact, these people were already infected with the undead plague. It was just that the extent of it was relatively shallow. The first batch of infected people in Maple City were Lord March's officers, followed by the guards. According to the description in the Undead Plague Plan, when Lich Ebenezer spread the plague, he was very careful. He never showed himself, and he spread the plague slowly through the military officers, the guards, the square in the inner city, the outer city, and the slums. He tried his best not to attract attention. Even so, the abnormalities in Maple City still made Knight Jarek of Blacktip Adjudicator suspicious, which led to the subsequent events. Bai Xiaowen and Ebenezer walked out of the Underground Research Institute and began to reward the bandits who had done well, as well as settle down the residents of Maple City. Bai Xiaowen made Kitz a knight and his fief was an abandoned farm in Whitestone Town. This made Kitz overjoyed. He had thought that his boss was just talking about making him a knight. He didn't expect it to happen so quickly. A bandit becoming a knight was something Kitz had never expected. As for where his fief was, Kitz didn't care at all. No matter what, he was now a nobleman. The other bandits were all envious, jealous, and hateful, especially the elite bandits who thought they were no weaker than Kitz. Their eyes were burning with jealousy. Kit's conferment is only the first step. Bai Xiaowen's calm voice suppressed the bandits' discussion. In the next half a month, I will confer the second batch of knights. Fight bravely under my command. I don't care what your background is, as long as you perform meritorious deeds, you will have the opportunity to be promoted. In half a month? The bandits were all shocked. This short period of time was almost within reach. This was also in line with the bandits' desire for quick success, and many of their eyes lit up. Usually, the Lord would be very careful when conferring a knight. This was because conferring a knight meant giving a fief, and a small part of their own territory had to be given away. Bai Xiaowen then rewarded the bandits in batches with the riches he had plundered from Maple City. Maple City was indeed much more prosperous than Whitestone Town. Bai Xiaowen only took out a small portion of the gold coins in his treasury, and every bandit's pockets were filled to the brim. Even their hands were full. Next, Bai Xiaowen wrote a public notice and began to pacify the people. In the public notice, Bai Xiaowen wrote that his side was under orders from the Empire to come to Maple City to exterminate Lord March, who had already turned into an undead, and destroy the Undead Slayer. After all, it wasn't the first time he had used the Empire's name. However, at the end of the public notice, Bai Xiaowen told the truth about the plague of the undead, and said that the residents were very likely already infected and would become undead slaves after death. The reason Bai Xiaowen didn't mince his words was that he was looking for volunteers to conduct human experiments on the plague of the undead. In the public notice, Bai Xiaowen detailed the symptoms of the early, middle, and late stages of the plague of the undead. He also said that the Empire's scholars were currently working hard to develop a cure for the plague of the undead, and they needed infected people in different stages of their experiments. After the public notice was posted, Not only did it not have the effect of pacifying the people, but it also made the residents of Maple City even more terrified. No one wanted to die and become a mindless undead slave. A slight riot broke out in Maple City. Some of the bandits felt that they didn't have many days left to live, so they started smashing and looting, and even committing murder and arson. However, Bai Xiaowen had already ordered the bandits to split up and patrol the city. They caught a group of bandits who were smashing and looting, tied them up, and sent them to the underground research facility. 2 days passed, and Zombie Doctor had enough samples. Of course, not all of them were bandits. There were also a few volunteers who volunteered to be human test subjects. There were noble people everywhere, but there were also despicable people. Bai Xiaowen could only ask Zombie Doctor to take care of the volunteers as much as possible, and not let them participate in experiments that were too dangerous. Chapter 261. In the front hall of the rebuilt Redleaf Manor, a bandit rushed in anxiously. "This is bad, sir. Are they undead?" Bai Xiaowen asked. I don't think so. I saw 2 human knights leading them," Li Shi said. "Could they be special envoys sent by the Empire to interfere with Redleaf City's affairs?" Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "Logically speaking, it shouldn't be so fast. I think those 2 knights might be people like Ian and Jarek. Let's go and take a look. Even if they are enemies, we can handle them." Many Redleaf City residents stood at the city gate. They were all curious and wary as they looked at the group of people in the distance. The 2 knights in the lead stood shoulder to shoulder. There was no difference in status between them. One of the knights, who was sturdy and built like an iron tower, said loudly, "Is the Redleaf Manor's lord here?" "March is dead. I am now in charge of Redleaf City." Bai Xiaowen appeared on the city wall and said loudly, "I am the Lord of Whitestone Town. You can call me Dior." "Who are you?" The 2 knights rode slowly to the city gate. "We are Knights of the Holy See." "You can call me Job, Lord. The man beside me is Ferdinand." The sturdy knight raised his head and said, "We've received news that there's a serious undead riot in Maple City. Under Prince Nicholas' orders, we're here to eliminate the undead." Job took out a stone engraved with mysterious runes. "This is a communication rune. You can use it to contact Prince Nicholas. Lord Dior, Prince Nicholas has many questions for you." There was a flash of light. Large patches of colorful mist rose from the communication rune. Soon, the colorful mist condensed and turned into an illusory image of a person. It was a handsome young man with a tall figure and dazzling blonde hair. He wore an Azure Knight's armor, and on his back was a flashy cape with a fierce lion pattern. The silver war hammer in his hand had lightning flowing around it from time to time. Just from the illusory image, one could see how powerful he was. The Redleaf City residents knelt on the ground and cheered Prince Nicholas' name. "This Xiao Bai's popularity seems to be much higher than mine. She's not bad looking either. She almost caught up with me," Bai Xiaowen muttered to Li Shi. When the image of the prince appeared, Bai Xiaowen naturally had to show the proper respect. He walked down the city wall and came out of the city gate. He gently tapped his right fist on his left chest and bowed in a greeting commonly used in the Kane realm. "It's an honor to meet you, Your Highness." Prince Nicholas nodded and said, "Who are you?" Bai Xiaowen introduced himself. "The Lord of Whitestone Town? I remember that Whitestone Town is a very small territory. It's hard to believe that you have the strength to conquer Redleaf territory." Prince Nicholas's face showed an intriguing expression. Bai Xiaowen said, "Your Highness should know that there are many groups of bandits in Whitestone Town. They are all pitiful people who have gone astray. I incorporated them into my army. This way, I have a good fighting force. When I purified Redleaf territory, they put in a lot of effort." Bai Xiaowen purposely used the word purify instead of conquer. "Reorganize the bandits?" Job suddenly asked. "There's a Black Wind bandits in Whitestone Town. You also incorporated them? What about their leader, Ian?" Bai Xiaowen replied, "Ian is already dead." Upon hearing the news that Ian had been killed, Prince Nicholas frowned slightly, while Job and Ferdinand revealed unconcealable sorrow on their faces. There was also a trace of undetectable resentment in their eyes when they looked at Bai Xiaowen. After all, Ian was their comrade. However, Bai Xiaowen was not stupid enough to reveal Ian's true identity. He continued to narrate, glossing over the discovery of clues to the Plague of the Dead and focusing on the battle results. March, Jarek, and the Lich Ebenezer were mentioned. In other words, you have removed an important nest of the Plague of the Dead for the Empire. Well done. Prince Nicholas nodded. Also, I have seen your contribution to the Empire's conscription order. Now, you have a good army under your command. Bring them to the Black Rock defense line and fight for the fate of the Empire and mankind. A notification came from the spiritual realm. Hero level side mission step 1, the truth of the plague has been completed. Evaluation, excellent. Main mission, recruiting your army has been completed. Evaluation, perfect. Prince Nicholas continued, the army under your command is enough to serve as the main force of the 17th Infantry Formation of the Black Rock defense line. Based on this, I will give you the position of commander of the 17th Infantry Formation. This is an important military position in the Human Alliance Army. You must not slack off. In the war, if you make enough contributions, I will ask His Majesty to promote your noble rank to match your military position. Bai Xiaowen nodded. I will prove my loyalty to the Empire and the people, Your Royal Highness. He knew very well that the position of commander of the 17th Infantry Formation was generally held by viscounts. However, it was because Bai Xiaowen had recruited enough soldiers, more than 10 times the number of ordinary Baron-level lords, that he was given an important military position as an exception. A notification came from the spiritual realm. You have completed the main mission. In the next 9 days, 14 hours, 23 minutes, and 31 seconds, you can freely explore and leave the Cane Bit Wall at any time in combat state. The psionic points, equipment, and items obtained will not be lost. Main mission step 2, the War of the Black Rock defense line, begins. Mission objective, guard the Black Rock defense line for 10 days until the arrival of the Empire's reinforcements. Mission difficulty, S. Mission duration, 15 days. After this mission, there was a special prompt. Countdown to the attack of the survivors, 9 days, 14 hours, 23 minutes, and 31 seconds. Please rush to the Black Rock defense line before the countdown ends. If you are late, the mission will be considered a failure. If, Main Mission 2, the War of the Black Rock defense line, fails, all the psionic points, equipment, and items obtained during the execution of the main mission will disappear. The gains obtained during the execution of Main Mission 1, Enlist Your Army, will not be affected. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi shared the prompt. The two looked at each other and saw a trace of excitement in each other's eyes. What did Main Mission 2, the War of the Black Rock defense line, mean? A full 15 days of extra stay in the Cane Bit Wall. It was almost equivalent to another ticket to the spiritual realm. Moreover, its significance was far greater than a ticket to the spiritual realm. The two could start with the current situation, dig deeper into the side missions, and plan for more benefits. Many awakened ones believed that the stay time in the spiritual realm, 10 days, was too short. It was like a project that had just started and had to return because of the time limit. They could only do some short-term small projects and could not make long-term arrangements. Therefore, a ticket to stay for 15 days was much more valuable than a ticket to stay for 10 days. It was at least twice as valuable. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi could stay in the Cane Bit Wall for 30 days. For Bai Xiaowen, who was good at making arrangements, how many benefits could there be? It was really hard to explain in a few words. At least from Bai Xiaowen's point of view, he would not be willing to exchange 10 tickets to the spiritual realm below grade C for 30 days. And the extra 15 days of stay was a qualification that Bai Xiaowen had fought for himself. Under normal circumstances, awakened ones who completed Main Mission 1 could only enlist a dozen people at most. Even if the number exceeded the mission requirements, it could not be too much. A small team of a dozen people was very inconspicuous in the Black Rock defense line. They could not get an important military position at all. Of course, there was no way to get extra time. However, Bai Xiaowen had recruited 20 times the number of people and even took down the Red Leaf territory. This meant that he had also completed the recruitment mission that Lord March had originally shouldered. This led to him obtaining the command of an entire infantry phalanx and having an important position in the Human Alliance army. After the spiritual realm's rules calculated, it judged that the role played by Bai Xiaowen, Dior Kale Bloom, the Lord of Whitestone Town, had an important position that affected the balance of the situation. He could not be casually kicked away. Therefore, the main mission too was activated. This was also the content that Bai Xiaowen had vaguely guessed when he first entered the Cane Bit Wall and came into contact with the main mission one. At that time, there was a hint that said, the stronger the army you recruit, the higher your position in the Human Alliance army will be. If there was no more time to stay, then what was the point of getting a higher position in the Human Alliance army? The spiritual realm's rules would not give meaningless hints. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen spent a lot of time recruiting bandits to form an army. However, before the official appointment is made, I need to verify something, Prince Nicholas called out. Ferdinand. Yes, Your Highness. Beside Job, another knight named Ferdinand took out a monocle and put it on. Then, he carefully sized up Bai Xiaowen. Lord Dior is not a revenant. He is not infected by the plague. The monocle was the holy light plague detector. Job looked relieved. Prince Nicholas nodded. Very good. However, when Ferdinand's gaze turned to the others, especially the residents of Red Leaf City, he frowned. Wait a moment. Your Highness. Although Lord Dio and his guards weren't infected by the plague, the rest of Red Leaf City's residents are all infected. There's not a single healthy person left. What? Knight Job exclaimed. He looked at the citizens of Maple City with pity in his eyes. Bai Xiaowen had a bad feeling. What's wrong? The image of Prince Nicholas waved his arm. Eliminate them all. Leave this task to Lord Dior and his guards. Job, Ferdinand, you are in charge of supervising the execution. Do not let any of the infected escape. Yes, Your Highness. Job and Ferdinand both sighed. Lord Dior, give the order. Wait, what's going on? Bai Xiaowen was stunned. This inexplicably familiar scene, wasn't there a plot like this in a game in another time and space? Infected civilians, a prince who followed the path of the holy light since young, and the butcher of Stratholme, could Prince Nicholas be Kane's version of Arthas? Did you not hear His Highness' order? Eliminate all infected civilians. There is no hope for them. Job's voice was loud and clear. He did not care about the many residents of Red Leaf City around them. Ferdinand said, Your Highness, please carry out His Highness' order as soon as possible. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said unequivocally, I refuse. You refuse my order? Prince Nicholas frowned and looked unhappy. You have to think carefully. This is my decision. The army's duty is to protect the people. If I receive an order to wield my sword at defenseless civilians, I will not accept it. Bai Xiaowen made himself look like a righteous man. The residents of Maple City who were in a state of panic looked at Bai Xiaowen with hope in their eyes. Prince Nicholas was not angry. Job and Ferdinand were not surprised by Bai Xiaowen's words. This was because the values of the Plantagenet dynasty were as such. The knight's creed emphasized benevolence and did not bully the weak. If Bai Xiaowen agreed to Prince Nicholas' order to massacre the entire city, the three of them would have to consider whether Bai Xiaowen was cold-blooded by nature. Your Highness, believe me. His Highness' order may be cruel, but it is the wisest decision. Job advised, Red Leaf City is not the first city infected by the Plague of the Dead. There was a similar city before, but His Highness did not have the determination to massacre the entire city. In the end, the city was filled with the undead. The Empire paid a huge price to wipe them all out. That's right. When His Highness gave this order, it was more painful than you think. However, as a leader, he could not show his pain. Dior, if you can't bear to do it, or if you don't want to bear this infamy, let us do it. Bai Xiaowen saw that the act was almost done, so he spoke the truth. I understand the horror of the plague of the dead, but blindly killing will not solve the problem. We must think of a way to find the antidote to the plague of the dead. I believe that there must be a way to save these innocent people. You have a way? Prince Nicholas's sharp eyes stared at Bai Xiaowen. In fact, one of my scholars is researching the antidote to the plague of the dead, Bai Xiaowen said. Countless scholars from the Church of Holy Light have tried to research the plague of the dead. Even Archbishop Arlo is helpless. I don't think that your scholar can do something that so many scholars can't. Chapter 262. Arthas, oh no, Prince Nicholas was silent for a moment. Actually, Prince Nicholas was kind by nature. If there was a glimmer of hope, he would not be willing to massacre the city. How confident are you? Bai Xiaowen thought for a moment and could only shake his head honestly. It's hard to say. However, regardless of whether we succeed or fail, I believe that we should study this terrifying plague properly. Only by understanding it can we defeat it. All right then, I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself, said Prince Nicholas. You don't have to report to the Black Boulder defense line for the time being. Also, in the name of the Empire's Crown Prince, I give you temporary authority to manage Maple City. In the meantime, you must continue to investigate the Plague of the Dead and eradicate the other hidden spreaders of the Plague of the Dead. Bai Xiaowen thumped his right fist on his left chest and bowed. Your Highness' kindness shines upon all the people of Maple City. I haven't finished yet, Prince Nicholas said. If you can develop an antidote to the Plague of the Dead, I'll give you a generous reward, along with the credit for finding out the truth about the Plague of the Dead. If you fail, I will assign you to the most dangerous front line of the Black Boulder defense line and fight against the most elite surviving army. After a pause, Prince Nicholas continued, and if you neglect your duties and cause the undead to go out of control in Maple City, I will strip you of your title and take away your territory. Do you agree? Bai Xiaowen nodded without any pressure. I agree. His swift and decisive attitude moved the two knights, Job and Ferdinand, a little. How important was a noble title and hereditary territory to a feudal lord? But this lord was willing to use such an important thing as a wager for a city of people he did not know. It was rare. What they did not know was that Bai Xiaowen was not from the Cane Plain. Even if he did not agree, he would have to give up his territory here. Since that was the case, why not take the risk? Prince Nicholas nodded. I'll leave this communication room to you. I will share some of the research progress of the Black Boulder defense line on the Plague of the Dead with the scholar in Maple City. I hope you succeed. Then, the image of Prince Nicholas disappeared. Job and Ferdinand handed the communication rune to Bai Xiaowen. Notification from the spiritual realm's rules. You have obtained a special item, communication rune. This item can be activated with other communication runes that are bound to it, and it can transmit some important images and information at the same time. This item cannot be taken out of the Cane Plain. Hero level side mission step 2, Fight the Plague, activated. Mission objective A, create an antidote for the undead plague. Mission objective B, eliminate all undead creatures transformed from the Plague of the Dead within the northern borders. Mission difficulty, S, mission reward, unknown. Mission duration, equal to the remaining time you can stay in the Cane Plain. The two knights, Job and Ferdinand, hesitated for a moment before asking in a low voice, Ian in. Jarek, before they died, did they leave behind anything? Bai Xiaowen took out Ian's diary, and Jarek's diary, and handed them to Job. Since they're your comrades, I'll leave their diaries to you. Thank you very much. Bai Xiaowen received a notification from the spiritual realm that Job and Ferdinand's favorability towards him had increased. Job handed Bai Xiaowen a neatly folded map. We've been secretly investigating the Plague of the Undead and have learned of some secret strongholds. Ferdinand and I can't split ourselves up, so we'll leave the strongholds near the Red Leaf territory to you to eliminate. Bai Xiaowen took the map and nodded in thanks. Actually, Job was doing this to share some of the credit with Bai Xiaowen as a form of gratitude. With their level 6 strength, eliminating the strongholds of the Plague of the Undead was not difficult. The most difficult part was investigating the location of the hidden strongholds. In the S-rank hero mission Fight the Plague, Bai Xiaowen's participation was directly related to the final rating of the mission, which was the amount of merit in the eyes of Prince Nicholas. Therefore, the secret strongholds of the Plague of the Undead on this map could be considered to have helped Bai Xiaowen a lot. After sending off the 2 knights and their subordinates, Bai Xiaowen returned to the city, surrounded by the residents of Red Leaf City. Originally, the residents of Red Leaf City were very resistant to Bai Xiaowen and his bandit guards. However, after today's events, their attitude towards the bandit guards had greatly improved. As for Bai Xiaowen's request to gather the residents with more serious infection and obvious symptoms and set up quarantine areas, the residents of Red Leaf City were much less resistant. Although there were still some dissatisfied protests, they didn't amount to much. After the order in Red Leaf City was stabilized, Bai Xiaowen, Li Shui, and Bonita followed the map's guidance and went out to eliminate the strongholds of the Plague of the Undead. These secret strongholds were very small in scale. At most, there were 1 or 2 mid-level elites resisting. They posed no threat. The seized items and information were all sent to Dr. Zombie's Underground Research Institute. It was worth mentioning that Bai Xiaowen's Wrath Claw Summoning and Deterrence skills had finally reached level 3. In fact, after the Battle of Red Leaf City, his proficiency in these 2 skills was already close to full. This kind of high-intensity battle had a significant effect on skill proficiency. The 2 skills that had reached level 3 were now at level 4 under the buff of the Strongest Scholar title. They enjoyed the enhancement effect of leveling up to level 4 in advance, but they needed to be drawn. In one of the secret strongholds of the Plague of the Undead, Bai Xiaowen chose to draw the level 4 enhancement effect of Wrath Claw Summoning. A roulette will appear in front of Bai Xiaowen. There were 4 regions on it, with the words normal, excellent, excellent, and perfect. Just like the famous lottery roulette wheel on Earth, the normal region was the largest, taking up 40% of the prize. The following regions were 30%, 20%, and 10% respectively. These should be different enhancement effects. The rarer the enhancement, the more powerful it is, Li Shui said. Bai Xiaowen, on the other hand, was very open-minded about it. Normal level enhancement effects are not necessarily weak. Everything depends on the compatibility. He thought of the old demon's flash skill. Because of the high compatibility between LV4 and LV7 enhancement effects, this ordinary skill rose to the level of a control skill with an extremely high tactical status. Bai Xiaowen turned the roulette wheel. The needle spun quickly, then slowly slowed down. Chapter 263. Oh, what a pity. If only it was a few inches closer, it would have been the perfect area, Li Shui said. Bai Xiaowen chuckled. Don't be so greedy. The perfect area is so small. If you miss it, you'll end up in the 40% normal area. He was already very satisfied that he had drawn 20% of the excellent area. The roulette disappeared, and a notification from the spiritual realm appeared. You have drawn the excellent grade enhancement effect, Blood Rage. Your summoned creature, the Wolf Pack leader Wrath Claw, has obtained the passive skill, Blood Rage. When attacked, the Wrath Claw will go berserk. For every 1% of its health points lost, it will gain 1% critical hit chance. Bai Xiaowen said, this enhancement effect will be very powerful if it is given to a tank-type summoned creature. The Wrath Claw specializes in agility, but its constitution is still a bit low. It has less health points, so it has less room for error. Rage Claw's vitality was only 16 points, and his HP was only 160 points. If he wanted to fully utilize the effects of Blood Rage, it would be more obvious if he maintained his HP at 50% to 75%. However, if he maintained his HP this way, he would be easily killed by the boss ultimate skill. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen did not have a tank-type summon creature that could really tank the boss's damage. He could only rely on the number of skeleton swordsmen to make up for it. The protection they could provide was limited. He was not like a true main tank like Han Su, who had the skill, assist, to block damage and increase his room for error. After that, Bai Xiaowen chose to draw the level 4 enhancement effect of deterrence. This time, he had drawn the 30% area of the excellent area. His luck was not bad. You have drawn the excellent grade enhancement effect, crush. Enemies with less than 30% of your mental strength will suffer an additional crushing effect. The fear effect will be changed to stun. Literally speaking, crush added a stun status, which was a hard control effect that was even stronger than fear. It was quite good. However, the restriction was also very strict. The enemy's mental strength must be less than 30% of Bai Xiaowen's mental strength. Bai Xiaowen's total mental strength was now 34 points, which meant that only enemies with mental strength below 11 points would be stunned. Enemies with mental strength above 11 points would not be stunned. Looking at it this way, the additional effect was actually a bit weak. Enemies with less than 11 points of intelligence were generally not that strong. At most, they would be elites, and it was unlikely that they would be bosses. For example, the Terror Knight Commander Jarek's intelligence was already a typical example of a boss with 12 points of intelligence. He couldn't ask for more from the excellent enhancement effect. At the very least, the deterrence skill would be more effective against large AoE minions. Bai Xiaowen's Black Soul Stone had been absorbing the souls of powerhouses. Now, it had reached 185 soul essence. Bai Xiaowen only needed a few more growth points to reach level 4. Once he unlocked the 4th enhancement scroll, Bai Xiaowen's strength would increase once again. Li Shi's 3 skills were now at level 3. However, she didn't have the strongest Brainiac's combat specialties and skill level +1, so she couldn't draw the level 4 strengthening effect for the time being. Moreover, the proficiency points required to upgrade the skills from level 3 to level 4 had also increased greatly. Fortunately, 2 of Li Shi's 3 skills were minor skills with short cooldowns, so the proficiency points increased relatively quickly. After returning to Maple City, Bai Xiaowen unexpectedly met an acquaintance, Anton. "Anton, what are you doing here?" Bai Xiaowen asked when he saw Anton's disheveled appearance. His clothes were soaked with sweat, and he looked like he was travel-worn. Lord, it's not good." Anton's face was filled with horror. "Don't be afraid. Tell me, did something happen in Whitestone Town?" Bai Xiaowen had basically turned out in full force when he attacked Maple City this time. Whitestone Town didn't have any decent defensive forces left behind. However, Bai Xiaowen had already cleaned up the stronghold of the Plague of the Dead in Whitestone Town. Logically, there shouldn't be a large-scale Plague of the Dead in Whitestone Town. Anton gasped for breath and said, "People have been dying in the town these days, and their corpses are incomplete. We all suspect that there are man-eating beasts." Bai Xiaowen frowned slightly. He couldn't get any useful clues from Anton's description. He could only conclude that it wasn't the Plague of the Dead for the time being. "I know, Anton. You go and rest first. I'll go back to Whitestone Town to deal with this matter," Bai Xiaowen said. Anton nodded heavily. "I beg Lord to hurry up. Alas, we've just had a peaceful life for a few days. How could something like this happen again?" After pacifying Anton, Li Shi asked, "Are you really going back to Whitestone Town? There are so many things to do here." Bai Xiaowen said, "Whitestone Town is our foundation. We can't lose it. Although I now have Prince Nicholas's permission to temporarily manage Maple City, from the perspective of the Empire's laws, I still have no authority over Maple City. I estimate that I'll have to wait until I complete the second phase of the mission before I can incorporate Maple City into my fief." Li Shi nodded and said, "Whitestone Town doesn't have any defensive facilities. Why don't we move the residents there to Maple City?" Bai Xiaowen smiled and nodded. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Let's settle this matter this time." While the two were discussing, they suddenly heard a terrifying roar coming from the underground research institute in the backyard. Bai Xiaowen's expression changed. Zombie Doctor's carrier was his summoned creature. There was a spiritual connection between the two, and he could sense that Zombie Doctor was calling for help. Bai Xiaowen had high hopes for Zombie Doctor. He couldn't allow anything to happen to the underground research institute. He and Li Shi quickly ran over. The manhole cover of the research institute had already been opened. They saw Zombie Doctor scrambling out from afar and scrambling to close the manhole cover. But at this moment, a deathly white palm held the manhole cover. Then, more palms pushed up, stiffly but firmly pushing the manhole cover open. Roar! 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 Many unknown roars could be heard. Zombie Doctor turned around and ran. What's going on? Bai Xiaowen came up to him and stopped him. Could it be that there's a deviation in the experimental sample? Someone turned into an undead? Thank God, you're finally here. Zombie Doctor almost bumped into Bai Xiaowen. He suddenly looked as if he had seen his savior. Hurry up and destroy these guys. This is a byproduct of my research and development of the antidote. At this moment, the manhole cover had been opened. One by one, slow-moving humanoid figures climbed out of the ground. Every one of them had slightly white eyes and deathly white skin. They were very different from ordinary undead ghouls. Bai Xiaowen used insight. Zombie, normal level 3, race, undead/zombie demon, attributes, strength 15, agility 9, constitution 13, spirit 3, skills, infection, stiffening skin. Chapter 264. Bai Xiaowen couldn't help but be stunned. After the zombies left the manhole cover, they immediately pounced on the Zombie Doctor. Bai Xiaowen drew his Desert Eagle and killed the first zombie with a headshot. Then, a large number of summoned creatures went up to meet the zombies. These zombies looked terrifying, but their true strength was ordinary. They were just ordinary residents of Maple City, so most of them were just ordinary templates. After coming into contact with the zombies, they fell to the ground one after another. It was worth mentioning that these zombies didn't have any vital points. Li Shi's sword pierced the heart, and the damage was definitely more than 1/3, but it still didn't trigger the instant kill effect. Li Shi had no choice but to use 2 more sword strokes to empty the first zombie's HP bar. However, this zombie's HP bar was reduced to 1/130. It fell to the ground and twitched. Its HP bar was slowly recovering, and it looked like it would recover in a few minutes. Let's try cutting off its head. Bai Xiaowen recalled the zombie he killed with a headshot. Li Shi swung, Red Leaf Overlord's glory sword, and chopped off the head of the fallen zombie. This time, its HP bar finally dropped to 0/130. It was completely dead. After gaining experience, it was much easier to deal with these zombies. All they had to do was attack their heads. Seeing Li Shi, with 2 swords in hand, killing these zombies like cutting vegetables, the Zombie Doctor heaved a sigh of relief. Let's wait first. Try to capture a few alive. These are all precious samples, didn't you say that these are all byproducts? Bai Xiaowen asked. Accidental products are also valuable. Many great scientific discoveries are just insignificant accidents. The Zombie Doctor said with conviction. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. He controlled the summoned creatures to not attack the zombies' heads. They only emptied their HP bars, and when they fell to the ground to recover, he tied them up with iron chains. In the end, they captured 5 zombies and brought them back to the Underground Research Institute, where they were firmly tied to the pillars with iron chains. Can you tell me now? What happened? Bai Xiaowen pressed. Bai Xiaowen was a little angry that this happened. He was about to return to White Stone Town, and he did not want his backyard to be on fire. This time it was a zombie, but what about next time? What about next time? If Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi weren't around, the bandits might not be able to clean up Dr. Zombie's mess. Zombie Doctor knew that he was in the wrong, so he coughed and said, "Well, I've been researching the antidote all this time, and I've already completed most of it. I'm only missing one supplementary substance. According to what you can understand, it's a guiding drug. Are you experimenting with auxiliary substances now?" "Yes, that's right. With the help of the instruments in the Research Institute, I conducted a brief analysis of my own form of existence and found that I was a special energy substance. Extracting this special energy substance would cause me to weaken for a short period of time. I named this substance WDA. I believe that WDA is the main substance that allows me to maintain my soul and thoughts in my zombie form." "Speak human language," Bai Xiaowen said curtly. "Ahem, I just extracted something from myself and added it as a guiding drug into the antidote, then injected it into the experimental subjects." Zombie Doctor laughed awkwardly. But the results seemed to be a little off. These guys didn't become undead in the usual sense, but a different kind of undead creature. The difference was not small. One was a ghoul from an ancient European fantasy world, while the other was a zombie from a modern version of Raccoon City's Resident Evil. Bai Xiaowen glared at Zombie Doctor. "What I want you to do is research the antidote, not randomly research yourself. Once the antidote is completed, you'll have plenty of time to study your own body structure. Don't forget, the time I gave you was only 5 days, and now it's already the 4th day." "Layman," Zombie Doctor muttered. Bai Xiaowen's eyes swept over. Zombie Doctor held his head high and puffed out his chest. "Boss, although this incident was an accident, it opened a new door for me, and it preliminarily verified that my idea is feasible. Next, as long as we change to a suitable guiding drug, we'll definitely be able to develop an antidote to the undead plague. What kind of guiding drug should we use?" Bai Xiaowen was a little worried. "I've decided to start with the undead creatures that died in battle, Bai Xiaowen." "What nonsense are you up to now?" "Zombie Doctor, please respect a great scientist. My hypothesis is based on sufficient theoretical basis. Those undead creatures that were killed by the undead plague and successfully transformed must have antibodies to the undead plague in their bodies. As long as I can extract these antibodies and add them into the antidote, I'll definitely be able to create a drug to suppress the undead plague." Li Shi nodded. "That sounds reasonable." Bai Xiaowen thought for a second. "Today is the 4th day. Extract the antibodies first and create a new antidote. However, before I return to Maple City, you're forbidden from conducting a second experiment. If you dare to disobey, no matter what the result is, I'll send you back to the Soul Stone to undergo Dela for re-education." Zombie Doctor shrank back. "All right, you're the boss. You have the final say. But what if you don't return tomorrow? We only have 5 days to meet. When I return to Maple City, we'll begin the second experiment. As long as the antidote is successfully produced, you'll be considered to have completed the agreed-upon time. Because the number of days you have to wait while I'm away from Maple City won't be counted in the 5-day agreement, understood?" In fact, Bai Xiaowen hadn't expected Zombie Doctor to be able to come up with an idea for the antidote and enter the actual production stage in just 4 days. The 5-day deadline he'd set at the beginning was just a kind of spur. Of course, Zombie Doctor's academic and research abilities were strong. It was a pleasant surprise that he could produce results so quickly. Bai Xiaowen then called Kits and the other captains of the bandit guards over and gave them some instructions. "Boss Lord, you're going back? Aren't you going to take our brothers with you?" Kits grinned widely. "I still want to take a look at my fief." "What's there to see?" Bai Xiaowen shook his head. "Maple City is so big. There are tens of thousands of people in the city who are infected. There are only a few hundred of you. It's not enough for me to keep all of you here. Hurry up and clean up some empty houses near the Lord's Manor." Kits nodded. "No problem. Right now, at least half of the houses in Maple City are empty." Chapter 265. The current white stone town was quite different from the dilapidated state it had been at the beginning. Wooden houses were scattered all over the place, and wisps of smoke could be seen curling up from the chimneys. Several citizens clustered around Bai Xiaowen and the others as they arrived at the scene of the latest tragedy. More than a day had passed since the incident, and the citizens did not have the awareness to protect the scene. Placed in front of Bai Xiaowen were only two incomplete skeletons. These two skeletons had died in a tragic manner. One of them had a large hole in his stomach, and the dark red blood had coagulated. The other had his neck twisted 180 degrees, and even his tongue was sticking out. In addition to these two fatal wounds, the deceased's body was mottled with blood, and there was not a single piece of flesh that was intact. Li Shui endured the discomfort in his stomach and frowned. What kind of monster was it? When you saw it, didn't you find any clues? Anton shook his head. We suspect that it was a monster that could fly, because there were no monster footprints at the scene. Bai Xiaowen squatted down and began to identify the skeletons. It shouldn't have been done by a monster, Bai Xiaowen said. Look, the wounds on the deceased's thighs, calves, and arms have traces of sharp blades. It should have been done by someone. If that's the case, it's easy to understand why there are no footprints. The murderer was more cautious and erased the footprints. Bai Xiaowen stood up and continued, from the state of the deceased's death, we can restore part of the scene at the time of the crime. For example, the second victim's head and left shoulder were severely bruised, and the fatal injury was his neck being twisted. Among the murderers, there must be a very tall guy. He held the deceased's shoulder with one hand and grabbed his head with the other. Then, he twisted it. Bai Xiaowen demonstrated a movement that made everyone present, especially the citizens of White Stone Town, feel a chill on their necks. Li Shui quickly took on the role of Detective Conan. If that's the case, the murderer has to be at least 2 meters taller than the victim. Is there anyone in White Stone Town that tall? Anton shook his head repeatedly. Those burly and strong people have long left White Stone Town with their families. Now, there are not many residents of White Stone Town who are taller than me, let alone someone who is so much taller. As a miner, Anton was tall and sturdy, with a height of 1.8 meters. There was no doubt that the murderer was not from White Stone Town. Did you notice that the victim's body was covered in wounds? His skin and flesh were cut off in many places, Bai Xiaowen said. They nodded in unison. Generally speaking, unless the murderer is a psychopath, they wouldn't do anything unnecessary. Of the two victims, one had his neck broken, and the other had a large hole in his stomach. They were fatal injuries that could have killed him on the spot. Why did the murderer cut off their flesh? Bai Xiaowen muttered to himself, there's a 10% chance that the murderer is a psychopath. There's a 20% chance that the murderer tortured the victims before they died for revenge. And the biggest possibility is that the murderer needs the meat as food. Everyone's expression changed. Brother Xiao, it shouldn't be that bad, right? Li Shui's face was a little pale. She had only heard of ancient stories of cannibalism in history books. She had never thought of such a terrible thing. There's no need to make such a fuss. If the last conjecture is correct, the murderer should be a remnant of the Sin realm. Only the demi-humans among the remnant would see us humans as moving rations. Moreover, many of the demi-humans are quite tall, so it's normal for strong men to be more than 2 meters tall. Bai Xiaowen voiced his judgment and summoned the Wrath Claw. If it was a simple case of monsters eating humans, I wouldn't have gone through so much trouble. I would have just moved the residents of White Stone Town away. But if it's a remnant of the Sin realm, it's necessary to investigate. At least, we should first understand the general strength of the remnant of the Sin realm. Bai Xiaowen said. The Wrath Claw sniffed the 2 corpses, then rubbed its big head against Bai Xiaowen's waist. It faced the north and scratched its claws. Let's go after the murderer. And Dong, pass on my order. Let the villagers pack their luggage, gather, and wait in the open space in front of the Lord's house. When I come back, I'll take you to Maple City. There are strong walls there. Even if the remnant of the Sin realm invades the northern frontier, they can resist. Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi rode the Wrath Claw and ran all the way north. Along the way, the Wrath Claw would occasionally stop, dig and sniff the ground, and then continue running. The Wrath Claw can be used to chase after the murderer. Its nose is like a dog's. Li Shi hugged Bai Xiaowen's waist and whispered. Wolves and dogs were originally a family. Dogs have been domesticated by humans for a long time and lack experience in hunting in the wild. Biological evolution is the law of advancing and discarding, so wolves have a better sense of smell than dogs. The Wrathclaw is the leader of the mutated wolves, so of course, its sense of smell is more sensitive. Bai Xiaowen said. North of Whitestone Town, in front of a small remote valley, the Wrathclaw quietly stopped, its claws digging, and its mouth made a low whining sound. Traces of human activity. Bai Xiaowen squatted down and identified the messy footprints on the ground. Judging from the direction of the footprints, it was a humanoid creature walking upright on 2 feet. However, the shape of the footprints was very strange. At the front of the long foot, there were only 2 toes, one big and one small, and there was a small protruding part of the heel, which seemed to be the 3rd toe. Bai Xiaowen used the Black Soul Stone's accompanying skill, Return of the Dead, and a group of undead summoned creatures appeared beside him. As for the zombie doctor, he had an independent consciousness and personality. Under the premise of Bai Xiaowen's consent, he could not respond to Bai Xiaowen's summons. As usual, Bai Xiaowen ordered the shadow assassin to turn invisible and sneak into the valley. There were a few animal skin tents in the valley, and in the center was a bonfire. Meat of unknown origin was being roasted over it. Around the bonfire, there were 3 humanoid creatures sitting in a circle. All of them were tall and slender, with green skin and sharp fangs extending from their mouths. Bai Xiaowen was very familiar with this appearance. Before entering the Cane Plain, he had drawn this template of a humanoid creature, a troll. When the shadow assassin approached, one of the trolls grunted in response. It tilted its head slightly, and its pointy ears perked up slightly. This troll's perception was very high. Bai Xiaowen controlled the shadow assassin to slowly retreat, not stepping into the range of the troll's alert. After that, Bai Xiaowen ended the vision sharing with the shadow assassin, opened his eyes and said, a total of 3 trolls. Looks like they are all elite creatures. They won't be much of a threat to us. Let's just go. Li Shi nodded. She couldn't wait to teach these flesh-eating monsters a lesson. When the summoned creatures rushed into the valley and blocked the entrance, the 3 trolls were still leisurely having a barbecue feast. A string of incomprehensible language came out from the mouth of the troll in the middle, but Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi couldn't understand it. When they first entered the Cane Plain, they only received the common language, Ancient Latin, for 100 mana points. These trolls were obviously speaking another language. If they couldn't understand the language, there was no need to communicate. Just as the troll's attention was attracted by the skeleton swordsman, the shadow assassin made the first move. With an assassination skill, it hit the back of one of the trolls. Bai Xiaowen used the insight skill on the troll. Sog Jututh, Elite Level 5, Race, Humanoid/Troll, Class, Troll Headhunter, Attributes, STR-15, DX-25. Con 24, INT 10, Skills, Rage, Regeneration, Blood Explosion Assassination. Bai Xiaowen was surprised by the level 5 elite's strength, mainly because the 3 skills were quite powerful. Rage was a skill that continuously stacked attack speed. Normal attacks had a chance of triggering it. Every time it was triggered, it would stack a stack. Each stack would increase attack speed by 10%, up to 50%. Regeneration was a passive skill of the trolls. It increased their HP recovery rate, and they could use a certain amount of stamina to recover their own broken limbs. The last one, Blood Explosion Assassination, was an ultimate skill. It consumed half of the user's HP to cast an ancient troll spell on the battle spear, dealing magic damage to enemies in a straight line. Of course, in terms of skill, this level 5 elite troll headhunter might not be stronger than apprentice knight Bonita. However, Bonita herself was a knight of divine grace. She had a high chance of evolving into a leader at a high level, which was why she had such powerful skills. Other than that, most of the knights in the Holy See didn't have Bonita's potential, let alone a fake like Keats. If this elite troll headhunter's skill was an ability that all troll headhunters had, then the combat strength of the survivors was quite terrifying. If a few more elite troll headhunters came, they could probably kill a leader of the same level without caring about their own injuries. Fortunately, the Shadow Assassin's attack was effective. It successfully pierced through the back of the first troll, dealing high damage and inflicting a bleeding status. When the three trolls saw Bai Xiaowen and Li Shui, they quickly gave up on communicating. They roared and charged at Bai Xiaowen. Their attack method was also very special. They used the spears on their backs to shoot, but the distance was relatively close. After a round of spear throwing, the four skeleton swordsmen rushed into the melee range of the three troll headhunters. However, the three troll headhunters took out their spears from their backs and held them with both hands. They fought against the skeleton swordsmen without any intention of retreating. They can attack and defend at close range. What a powerful unit. Bai Xiaowen ordered the Wrath Claw to pounce and bite the injured troll's arm. With a crack, the crippling effect of tear was triggered. Half of the troll's arm was bitten off. The injured troll roared. Its left hand pinched the broken arm and it took a step back. The other two troll quickly came to its rescue. Their passive abilities stacked together. Two spears stabbed the Wrath Claw one after another, then pulled back and stabbed again. The first troll beat its chest with its remaining left hand and roared. Blue veins popped out on its forehead as if it was in great pain. At the place where his right arm had been severed, a pale green arm suddenly sprang out. Compared to the rest of his skin, the color was a little lighter. This was the troll race's ability, regeneration. It was indeed very powerful. However, the first troll seemed to have used up a lot of energy. It took 2 deep breaths and didn't continue attacking. On the other side, Bai Xiaowen ordered the Wrath Claw to take 2 rounds of 4 attacks. Its health dropped to 60%. Under the effect of the LV4 skill, Blood Frenzy, the Wrath Claw's eyes quickly turned red. It had an additional 40% critical hit chance. The skill, Laceration, was used and triggered a critical hit. The second troll's stomach was almost split open and it was bleeding heavily. The Wrath Claw jumped up and bit the troll's throat. Critical hit. Another critical hit. The second troll's neck was bitten off. Blood spurted out. With this kind of terrible injury, no matter how strong the regenerative ability was, it couldn't be saved. It was an instant kill. The third troll yelled. It bit its middle finger and smeared its blood on its battle spear. It muttered something and stabbed its spear at the Wrath Claw. This spear had a terrifying blood-red glow. The wind was so strong that it was hard to open one's eyes. There are too many unnecessary actions. Bai Xiaowen was waiting for this moment. He immediately activated Deterrence. Enemies whose spiritual power is lower than 11, including 11, will fall into a coma. Even if it was higher than 11, they would enter the fear state after the deterrence skill passed. This was the special effect of Deterrence, after it was upgraded to LV4, Crushing. The third troll's mental strength was slightly higher. It entered the fear state and its ultimate skill, Blood Explosion Assassination, was killed. The first troll, whose arm had just been regenerated, was stunned. It was killed by Li Shui and his summoned creatures. As for the third troll, it wasted half of its health but it was useless. Bai Xiaowen's Desert Eagle was pointed at its forehead. He directly shot its head and didn't give it any chance to escape. After the battle ended, the Spiritual Realm's rules notified them, "You have eliminated the Troll Scout team of the Sinful Realm Alliance. Your reputation in the Human Race Alliance has increased. Current status, Friendly. Your reputation in the Sinful Realm Alliance has decreased. Current status, Hostile. You have received 107 merit points from the Human Race Alliance. Please go to Basil Heber, the quartermaster of the Black Rock Fortress, to check in exchange for military supplies." Li Shui also received the merit points notification. the two of them calculated that killing a level 5 elite troll would reward them with 50 merit points. The points would be distributed according to the contribution of the kill. It seems that the survivors of the Sinful Realm Alliance have begun to infiltrate before the battle. Then we'll have something to do while we're researching the antidote. We'll get a lot of merit points if we find these scouts and kill them, Bai Xiaowen said. Li Shi nodded in agreement. Chapter 266. The Black Soul Stone's current growth level is 200 Soul Essence. You can upgrade your exclusive equipment, Black Soul Stone, to level 4. Do you want to upgrade it? Bai Xiaowen chose yes without hesitation. The Spirit World's laws sent another message: the Black Soul Stone has been successfully upgraded to level 4. Current growth level is 200 Soul Essence. The Black Soul Stone's additional skill, Return of the Dead, has added a new special effect, Fixed Point Airdrop. The 4th level of the Black Soul Stone's Enhancement Atlas has been unlocked. Bai Xiaowen first looked at the Fixed Point Airdrop skill. Fixed Point Airdrop: when using the Return of the Dead skill, you don't have to summon all the creatures at once. Instead, you can accurately summon one or more of them in a range where they will appear. Note: the distance between the summoned creatures and you in a straight line must not exceed your mental strength *10 meters. Bai Xiaowen read the description of the special effect of Fixed Point Airdrop and said with a smile, so when the Black Soul Stone reaches level 4, it has additional special effects like skill levels and equipment enhancement levels. This Fixed Point Airdrop special effect is very useful. Is it very useful? There's no increase in attributes or numbers. Li Shi was a little puzzled. At most, it's a little more convenient. When you only need one summoned creature, you don't have to summon all of them at once. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, the essence of this special effect lies in the word fixed point. My understanding is that I can use summoned creatures to block some critical skills. For example, if I'm suddenly attacked and can't dodge, I can summon a skeleton sword-shielded soldier to block the enemy's attack. It's worth it to use a skeleton sword-shielded soldier to exchange for a critical skill of the enemy. Li Shi understood and nodded. Then, Bai Xiaowen opened the 4th level of the Enhancement Atlas and checked the enhancement options. Enhancement Option 1, added a summoned creature of the Corpse Demon race, Stitched Monster. Stitched Monster has an elite template and requires 150 Soul Essence. Enhancement Option 2, added a summoned creature of the Bone race, Skeleton Warrior. Skeleton Warrior has an elite template and requires 150 Soul Essence. Enhancement Option 3, added a summoned creature of the Soul race, Evil Ghost. Evil Ghost has an elite template and requires 200 Soul Essence. Upgrade Option 4, all attributes of your Skeleton Mage +4. Requires 150 Soul Essence. Upgrade Option 5, increase your zombie's HP by 100 points. Requires 100 Soul Essence. There were a total of 5 options, but the amount of Soul Essence required was not much higher. It was still within Bai Xiaowen's tolerance. The first 3 options were to add new creatures, while the last 2 options were to strengthen existing creatures. The first option that Bai Xiaowen eliminated was the seemingly cheap Option 5, Zombie Doctor. As for Option 4, it was a pretty good option. It gave the Skeleton Mage a +4 to all attributes. With the boost from Bai Xiaowen's Spirit Tutor skills and his innate spiritual power, the effect would be even more outstanding. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen's Black Soul Stone contained the souls of several Yellow Turban Army Lightning Warlocks. In addition, the Overlord of the Red Leaf Territory, March, who had just absorbed it, was also a Lightning Mage. The Skeleton Mages had yet to devour the souls of these powerful mages, probably because they were too weak. After gaining +4 to all stats, they would be able to devour the souls of commander-level powerhouses. At that time, there would be an additional boost. For example, the process of skeleton warriors evolving into skeleton swordsmen could be used as an example. Bai Xiaowen's super brain was still very good at drawing inferences from one case. In addition, Bai Xiaowen was also very curious about Option 3, the new Evil Ghost. This option was the most expensive of the 5 options. It required a total of 200 soul essence. In other words, according to the laws of the spirit realm, the strength of the evil ghost surpassed that of an ordinary elite. According to Bai Xiaowen's judgment, there were 2 possibilities for the evil ghost. One was a high agility assassin, similar to an elite ghost. The other was a high spirit ghost mage, good at mind control spells. Moreover, the latter was more likely. After all, the agility assassin already had a ghost. The importance of mind control spells was undeniable. In Bai Xiaowen's team, there had never been a hero-level tank-type profession. However, he was able to kill bosses repeatedly. The reason was that he had enough mind control spells and had a high priority. However, this was only Bai Xiaowen's speculation. He was also unsure of the position and type of the evil ghost. Moreover, 200 soul essence was indeed expensive. He did not want to take the risk. In Bai Xiaowen's heart, the newly added stitched monsters and skeleton warriors were definitely more important than stitched monsters. These 2 were melee types just by looking at their names. The stitched monster was probably a physique-type meat shield, while the skeleton warrior was probably a strength-type melee damage dealer. If he chose one of these 2 creatures, he would have to occupy a melee position. When besieging the boss, there would be summoned creatures or Li Shi watching from the side. He would not be able to squeeze in. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen's Return of the Dead skill had changed. He could keep 1 or 2 skeleton swordsmen to help himself or his teammates block the enemy's key skills. This would free up a melee position. The stitched monster was a meat shield, which was a bonus. Unfortunately, this kind of slow-moving elite-level meat shield was not only inferior to a hero-level tank-type awakened, but even an elite-level tank like Han Su could not compare. However, it was already good that they were useful. Therefore, in Bai Xiaowen's priorities, he first chose option 1, Stitched Monster. After he had accumulated more soul essence, he would light up option 4, Skeleton Mage all attributes +4. As for the remaining 3 options, he would choose them based on the situation in the future. The growth rate required to upgrade the Black Soul Stone from level 4 to level 5 was 1000. If he wanted to kill middle level 4 to 6, bosses to absorb their souls, he would need to kill about 20 of them. It was not easy to kill 20 bosses. If it was not a chaotic and violent small plane like the King of Fighters, he could not kill bosses casually. Even if he had the ability to kill bosses, it would cause more trouble and be difficult to bear. The most common thing was that when he killed the small ones, the big ones would come out. If a lord jumped out to protect him and seek revenge, he would probably be expelled from the spiritual world in advance. Chapter 267. 266. Taking a step back, the boss was not that easy to kill. As a summoner, Bai Xiaowen was an expert in the spiritual world. Moreover, the exclusive equipment of the Black Soul Stone was strong enough. With the support of a violent DPS like Li Shi, he was able to succeed repeatedly. Should he try another person? He would definitely be tortured by the boss to the point that even his mother would not recognize him. Even if he was also a hero, he would still be tortured by the boss without any special skills. Under normal circumstances, the boss in the world that an awakened was matched to was at least 2 levels higher than the awakened. Moreover, after the Black Soul Stone was upgraded to level 4, Bai Xiaowen also received a notification that the Black Soul Stone's taste had become more picky. It would no longer absorb the souls of beginner, level 1 to level 3, powerhouses. This undoubtedly put an end to some shortcuts. Bai Xiaowen could not help but sigh. The road to upgrading the Black Soul Stone was really long and arduous. After activating the first option, Bai Xiaowen's summonable list had the name of a stitched monster. With a flash of light, Bai Xiaowen summoned the stitched monster. This monster looked like the abomination that Bai Xiaowen had seen in the game in another time and space. It was a big fat monster with dead white skin. Its body also emitted a foul smell. It had a kitchen knife in its left hand and a metal hook in its right hand. There were several traces of thick hemp rope stitching on its body. From its appearance, Bai Xiaowen directly gave the stitched monster a cute name, Fatty. Bai Xiaowen received the detailed information of the stitched monster. Stitched monster, Elite Level 3, Race, Undead/Zombie Goblin, Attributes, STR 19, DEX 11, Constitution 25, Spirit 5, Bonus included, Combat Specialty, Advanced Throwing Level 3, Advanced Weaponry, Single-Handed Axe, Level 3, Advanced Combat Level 2, Skills, Meat Hook, Stiff Skin, Bloated Body. The stitched monster's attributes were similar to what Bai Xiaowen had expected. Its DX was mediocre and its spirit was extremely low. In terms of skills, Stiff Skin was a passive defensive skill that many corpse devil undead creatures had, and there was nothing special about it. Bloated Body skill's description was simple and crude. An additional 30% HP was a huge advantage for Fatty. His HP was equivalent to an additional 250 by 30% equals 75 points. With a total of 325 HP, it was definitely the most resistant of all the summon creatures. The last one was the stitched monster's only active skill, Meat Hook. Meat Hook, the stitched monster throws its hook in a direction and drags the first target it touches back. If the target was an enemy, the Meat Hook would deal moderate piercing damage. If the target is an ally, no damage will be dealt. This was a very tactical skill. If used well, its effects would be outstanding. Of course, with the pitiful intelligence and combat awareness of the stitched monster, it was hard to say whether it could hit the enemy. However, it was a good thing that Bai Xiaowen had the professional ability, mental connection, and could precisely control Fatty's movements. Precise control was not something a normal summoner could achieve. This was also the reason why summoners were not suited for team battles and competitions. Bai Xiaowen only had 50 soul essence left. The next step was to accumulate soul essence. Once he had accumulated 150 soul essence, he would activate the skeleton mage's enhancement skill. The three trolls dropped 2 silver treasure chests. However, the battle ratings were relatively low. One was C grade and the other was D grade. Opening the treasure chest on the spot, the D-grade treasure chest had a 1/3 chance of being empty. However, the C-grade treasure chest dropped an elite-grade long-handled weapon, a blue spear. This spear's attack power was quite high, but Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi could not use it. They could only store it in Bai Xiaowen's storage space. Its fate was probably to become an auxiliary item when enhancing equipment. After returning to White Stone Town, Anton had already gathered most of the residents of White Stone Town. Only a few residents who did not believe in Bai Xiaowen as the Lord were unwilling to move. Bai Xiaowen had Anton urge them a few more times. He even went to persuade them personally. In the end, he managed to persuade a dozen more residents to move with him. However, the remaining residents were adamant about leaving their homes. Bai Xiaowen had no choice but to lead a large group of his subjects and march towards Maple City in a grandiose manner. Along the way, Bai Xiaowen could vaguely sense that someone was spying on them. They were hidden very well. They were probably the same type of people as the 3 troll headhunters. They were a small infiltration team sent by the Sinful Realms remnant army. However, just because he could vaguely sense them, it did not mean that he could catch them and kill them. Bai Xiaowen himself had a large group of civilians with him. He could not go into the mountains to play the game of cops and robbers with these elite spies. He could only hurry along. Of course, such a large group could not be underestimated even if they were all civilians. The Sinful Realms spies did not dare to act rashly. After walking for a while, Bai Xiaowen turned around and glanced in the direction of White Stone Town. He sighed. "What's wrong?" Li Shi asked. "I'm afraid those civilians who stayed behind are done for," Bai Xiaowen said. "The Sinful Realms infiltrators can't do anything to our main force, but what about the remaining civilians? Their fates speak for themselves. You've done your best. They don't want to believe you. There's nothing you can do about it," Li Shi said. "You're right." There are more important things waiting for me to do in Red Leaf City, Bai Xiaowen said. He had a feeling that he was becoming more and more immersed in the role of the temporary lord of White Stone Town. After a day of travel, Bai Xiaowen led his people to Red Leaf City. Kits had already tidied up a few hundred empty houses near the lord's mansion. Compared to the simple wooden houses in White Stone Town, these beautiful brick and stone houses made the residents of White Stone Town very happy after a day of travel. They finally felt that following their lord was a wise decision. Bai Xiaowen also told them some things to take note of. For example, they were not to have too much contact with the local residents of Red Leaf City. All food had to be boiled before eating. They had to wash their hands before eating. The main purpose was to prevent more people from getting infected by the necromancy plague. Bai Xiaowen felt that he had a tendency to develop into a kindergarten teacher. When he finally settled the migrating residents, Zombie Doctor came looking for him. "Has the antidote been made?" Bai Xiaowen asked. Zombie Doctor puffed out his chest and said proudly, "Of course. I'm a first-rate science, scholar. When I have a direction for a breakthrough, it's only a matter of time before I find the answer." "Good. Let's go to the underground research center and start the rehabilitation experiment immediately." Bai Xiaowen did not have time to rest. The sooner the antidote was made, the better. Even if it did not succeed this time, it would give Zombie Doctor some experience and kick him back to work. In the backyard of the Lord's mansion, there were 9 test subjects in total. They were all humans infected by the necromancy plague. They were divided into 3 groups: mildly infected, moderately infected, and severely infected. There were 3 age groups in each group: old, middle-aged, and young. The Zombie Doctor opened a silver box, revealing a small blue pill inside. There were 3 compartments in the silver box. The blue pills inside were also different. They were light blue, dark blue, and light blue. Before the experiment begins, please allow me to introduce these test products. I've named them Plague Bane. Zombie Doctor picked up a light blue pill. This one is the primary Plague Bane. It's made from antibodies collected from ordinary undead monsters. According to my estimation, it's effective on humans in the initial stage of the infection. If taken orally, it'll take effect immediately. It only takes a course of treatment to eradicate the plague virus. I understand, Plague Bane. What's a course of treatment? Bonita asked in confusion. Bai Xiaowen glared at Zombie Doctor. It's what they call it in their world. You can think of it as a cycle. Li Shi asked, a course of treatment. Oh, how many pills do you need for a cycle? It's the Plague Bane. Zombie Doctor corrected him and said, a cycle is 7 days. Take 1 pill every morning and night. It should be enough. 14? That many? Li Shi exclaimed in surprise. There are more than 20,000 infected humans in Maple City. So, we need more than 300,000 pills. Only the Plague Bane is enough. The extraction process is relatively primitive. We can expand the production at any time, Zombie Doctor said. The key is the raw materials, which are the undead creatures that have been transformed by the plague. But, it shouldn't be a problem for half of them to survive. Half? That's still more than 100,000 Plague Bane pills. Do we have that many bodies of the undead? Bonita asked. Bai Xiaowen shook his head and calmly said, what he meant was that the other half of the infected will be killed immediately after they die and turn into undead. The corpses obtained will be the raw materials that can be used to extract antibodies and make blue pills. Ah. Bonita looked at Dr. Zombie with disgust as if she was looking at a pile of shit. Zombie Doctor didn't take it seriously and said proudly, Boss, let me correct you. The antidote is called the Plague Bane. Don't call it some kind of indescribable blue pill. It's an insult to my work. After a pause, Zombie Doctor continued to introduce the other 2 types of pills. The light blue pill was extracted from a normal tier undead of pestilence. It was called Elementary Pestilence Bane. The blue pill was extracted from the elite plague undead and was called Advanced Plague Bane. It was mainly for those who were moderately infected. The dark blue pill was extracted from the Commander Plague Undead and was called Super Plague Bane. It was mainly for those who were severely infected in the late stage. Let's start the experiment. I hope your pills are valuable, Bai Xiaowen said. Zombie Doctor hesitated. Should we tie up the samples? I don't mean anything else. It's just in case. Li Shi and Bonita both widened their eyes and stared at the shameless zombie doctor. Was this cowardly guy really the same person who had boasted that the antidote was fine? Bai Xiaowen waved his hand. No need. We're here. If anything happens, we'll take care of it immediately. Nothing bad will happen. Zombie Doctor nodded his big head and divided the elementary Plague Bane to those who were mildly infected, the intermediate Plague Bane to those who were moderately infected, and the Super Plague Bane to those who were severely infected. After distributing the pills, Zombie Doctor very obediently hid behind Bai Xiaowen without any hesitation. The infected had all been trained to be obedient and took the pills obediently. The atmosphere in the field instantly froze and fell silent. Suddenly, a mildly infected person clutched his throat and fell to the ground, rolling and howling in pain. As if a switch had been turned on, the other infected who had taken the pills all fell to the ground in pain. What's going on? Bonita was a bit scared. Li Shi grabbed Zombie Doctor from behind Bai Xiaowen. Give me an explanation. It's a normal reaction. The more advanced the infected person is, the more pain they'll feel. If they can't get through it, they'll still become the Plague Undead. Why didn't you say so earlier? Li Shi frowned. Bai Xiaowen patted Li Shi's shoulder. Okay, don't blame him. The results will be out soon. Some of the mildly infected people have stopped convulsing, but their vital signs are still there. When all the test subjects finally stopped convulsing, there was a foul smell in the field. Many of them had lost control of their bowels while they were rolling in pain. Zombie Doctor didn't care about that. He carefully strolled to the first group of infected people and picked up a mildly infected person's hair, carefully observing his eyelids and teeth. Ha ha ha. Zombie Doctor suddenly burst into laughter. I did it. I told you I'm a genius. How could such a simple plague be a problem for me? Bai Xiaowen and the others all came over. Zombie Doctor hurriedly explained, look, the dark circles under his eyes have become much lighter. He looks no different from an ordinary person who doesn't have enough sleep. His canine teeth and molar teeth have also become much sharper. The second group was almost the same. They had also changed for the better. Zombie Doctor then came to the third group, which was the severely infected. He said confidently, these late-stage infected people must be getting better. Look at this one. He already has the characteristics of an undead, such as sunken nostrils, protruding gums, sharper teeth, and thicker and harder nails. Look at him now. Huh. He hasn't changed at all. He seems to have become uglier, Li Shi said. The late-stage infected man whose hair was grabbed suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were turbid and dark red. Roar! The infected person reached out with two powerful claws and gripped Zombie Doctor's neck. He had died and turned into a zombie. Wah! Save, save! Zombie Doctor shouted, his face red. Actually, compared to this mutated individual, his level 3 zombie strength wasn't bad. If he struggled hard and attacked the opponent's weak points, he could escape. However, Zombie Doctor's combat awareness could only be described as he. Chapter 268. The group of 3 severely infected people was completely wiped out. Moreover, due to the stimulation of the Super Plague Bane, these 3 people's lives ended prematurely and were transformed into the undead of plague. According to Dr. Zombie's data collection, the most severely infected of these 3 people should be able to last for about 3 more days. Li Shi said, it seems that the antidote isn't a success. Although the other 2 groups look better, who knows if they will mutate again? Bernita looked at Dr. Zombie suspiciously. Dr. Zombie waved his hand and said, "Mutate again? That's impossible. From a scientific point of view, the development of the plague bane can be considered a success. As long as the first two groups take the medicine according to the treatment, they will definitely be cured of the plague virus in 7 days and recover their health. As for the premature mutation of the severely infected people, it's because the experimental subjects have weak willpower, and they can't withstand the pain caused by the super plague bane." Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, "Dr. Zombie is right. We can't completely deny the effects of the antidote just because of the incident with the severely infected group. Now, most of the residents of Maple City are lightly infected, so there's still hope of saving them." Prince Nicholas's heroic side mission, Part 2, Fight the Plague, had 2 objectives. After Bai Xiaowen's investigation, for missions with multiple objectives, at least one had to be completed, at least one, unless there were special instructions. The completion rate of each mission was calculated separately, and finally, based on the ratio, the completion rate of the entire mission would be calculated. Mission Objective A was to develop the antidote to the undead plague. The completion rate of this mission would definitely be based on the quality of the antidote. How would they determine the quality of the antidote? It was unreliable to rely on the scholars around Prince Nicholas to judge. It was obvious from the fact that they had yet to develop the antidote that they were far inferior to Dr. Zombie. How could they rely on elementary school students to grade college students' papers? Then, as the person who issued the mission and awarded the reward, Prince Nicholas's evaluation criteria would definitely be based on the number of survivors in Maple City. In fact, Prince Nicholas had mentioned this before, especially emphasizing that they couldn't lose control and create a situation where the city was full of undead. If that happened, Bai Xiaowen's title and fief would be stripped. This could be understood as a mission punishment. As for Mission Objective B, which was to eliminate all the undead creatures in the north due to the undead plague, the difficulty of this mission was simply too high. The S-rank difficulty of the second step of the Hero Tier side mission was most likely due to this. There were more than a dozen territories in the northern borderline. How many spirits of the plague were there? How many pseudo-undead had the plague virus lurking in their bodies but had yet to transform? No one knew. According to Bai Xiaowen's estimation, in order to accomplish the mission, he had to obtain a higher position in the coalition army of human beings, which was as important as Prince Nicholas and Archbishop Arlo. Then, he would send an army to search the entire northern border arbitrarily, killing the ghosts of plague and feeding the virus carriers the antidote. As for why it was called arbitrary? Because the entire Human Alliance army would definitely not agree to it. Everyone was defending the Black Rock stronghold against the attacks of the Sin Domain remnant citizens. Where would they be able to deploy so many military forces? Therefore, Mission Objective B was basically impossible to complete. The final mission evaluation would definitely not exceed 50%. Failure. However, failing the mission was still better than failing the mission. There would still be a reward. Even if the reward was reduced, the S-rank reward would definitely be generous. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Bai Xiaowen then came up with a plan for the next 7 days. The zombie doctor was in charge of expanding the production of the plague nemesis. At the same time, he was organizing the residents of Maple City to take medicine according to the degree of plague infection. Those who were slightly infected needed a beginner plague nemesis. This was fine as long as they used the normal template of plague undead antidote. However, those who were moderately infected needed an advanced plague nemesis. This required the elite template of plague undead antidote, which was quite scarce. As for those who were severely infected, they could only strategically give up. Previously, they had only used the antidotes of the undead boss in Maple City to create the super plague nemesis. Based on the calculation that 14 super plague nemesis were needed to cure a severely infected person, these 40 super plague nemesis could only cure a few people, not to mention the ridiculously high rate of early mutation. Apart from those elites and leaders with strong mental fortitude and endurance, ordinary people would not be able to withstand it, so there was no need to waste them. As for who to give it to first and who to give it to later, this was enough of a dilemma to make a moral choice. but it did not bother Bai Xiaowen for too long. Bai Xiaowen first gave a course of plague nemesis to a few volunteers and their families who volunteered to be test subjects. Then, he put a price tag on the 3 types of plague nemesis and sold them throughout the city. The price he set was quite expensive. With the gold coins that middle-class families saved up, they could at most buy 1 or 2 courses of treatment, which was enough to cure 1 or 2 people. Bai Xiaowen had no choice but to do so. The gold coins from selling these drugs could not be brought out of this world. Although it was a considerable amount of wealth, it was not very useful. The price was only set because there were fewer plague undead corpses to be used as materials in the early stages, so the production of the drugs was limited. In the disaster movie 2012 and Another Time and Space, it cost €1 billion per ticket. Were the leaders of the countries who set the prices really short of money? No, they were just trying to secretly draw a line without letting the public know the inside story, a line between those who were saved and those who were abandoned. When the end of the world came, euros were no different from scrap paper. Of course, when the Ark was being built, the large amount of euros collected through the sale of the tickets could be used to purchase construction resources more easily. But this was not the main point, so it was needless to say. Bai Xiaowen did this to draw a line. If he did not set any conditions, and anyone could get the drugs, Maple City would definitely be in chaos. Even so, Bai Xiaowen still ordered the bandit guards to patrol day and night, and focus on protecting the production site of the plague nemesis in the Lord's Mansion's Research Institute to prevent any disturbances. Although the plague nemesis was expensive, it was a life-saving drug, so the citizens of Maple City still tried their best to raise gold coins to buy it. For a time, the value of gold coins in Maple City skyrocketed. The streets and alleys were filled with stalls hawking goods at cheap prices. Bai Xiaowen could not suppress his exuberant brain cells. He ordered his men to secretly buy goods in small batches and store them at low prices. On his lord's page, food, construction materials, and other supplies were increasing rapidly by the hour. Chapter 269. Boom! Strands of fire energy exploded in the body of a humanoid monster with a green face and fangs. The monster collapsed to the ground. In front of the monster, Li Shi slowly sheathed her twin swords. Bai Xiaowen also put away his desert eagle. The spirit realm sent a notification: frowny face, you've eliminated the Sinful Realm Alliance's Orc Scout team. Your reputation in the Human Alliance has increased. Currently, it's at respected. Your reputation in the Sinful Realm Alliance has decreased. Currently, it's at hated. Your team has received 140 merit points this time. Your total merit points is 970. Li Shi's face was covered in dust and looked very tired. We've been to more than a dozen territories in the northern frontier. This is the last one, right? Bai Xiaowen nodded. From the map, this is Leia Town. It's our last stop. There are still a little over 16 hours before the War of the Black Lava Nation mission begins. Let's go back to Maple City and join the battle at the Black Lava Nation. After maintaining order in Maple City, Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi wandered around the territories in the northern frontier. When not in combat, Bai Xiaowen put away the summoned creatures from the Black Lava Spirit Stone and only summoned the Wrath Claw for the two to ride. If not for the Wrath Claw's speed, the two wouldn't have been able to cover the entire northern frontier in just 8 or 9 days. During this time, Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi encountered several infiltration squads from the Sinful Realm Alliance. They had a certain understanding of the elite forces of the Sinful Realm Alliance. The orcs were divided into pureblood orcs and half-blood orcs. They were the humanoid monsters with green faces and fangs that had just been killed. The pureblood orcs were taller and stronger and more violent. They were as strong as the elite headhunters of the Troll clan. Half-blood beastmen were the offspring of beastmen and humans. They were weaker in terms of strength, but they were generally more agile. In addition, there were also the Dark Elves, Dark Rangers, Scimitar Warriors, and the like. They all took the agile route. On the whole, the survivors of the Sin Domain Allied Army, regardless of whether they were normal or elite, were stronger than humans of the same level. Of course, the leader template was different. Bai Xiaowen complained to himself. Was it true that the harsher the environment, the more likely it was for a tribe of warriors to appear? He remembered that in another time and space, there was a certain magical race that could beat brown bears like teddy bears. It seemed that they lived in a world of ice and snow all year round. No matter what, the defensive battle of the Black Rock stronghold was rather grim. After returning to Maple City, Bai Xiaowen immediately readied himself and led the guards to escort a batch of resources to Black Rock City, which was further north. Now that Bai Xiaowen's guards had swelled to more than 500 people, with money and food, he could naturally continue to expand the number of soldiers. The original number of bandits had been reduced to less than half. It was no longer appropriate to call them a bandit squad. Now, they had a more resounding name, the Whitestone Army. Before the start of the second main mission, Bai Xiaowen finally led the Whitestone Army to Black Rock City and met the prince in person. After seeing him on the communication rune, Bai Xiaowen felt that the prince was nothing special. But after seeing Prince Nicholas with his own eyes, Bai Xiaowen realized with jealousy what it meant to have the aura of a child of the dimension, and what it meant to have the demeanor of a king. Prince Nicholas was dressed in military attire, and his words and actions already had the aura of a king. It seemed that nothing could stop him. After encountering a new situation, he would methodically issue the appropriate orders to solve it. The lord in front of Bai Xiaowen had already been influenced by Prince Nicholas's charisma. He bowed his head and was completely subdued by Prince Nicholas's domineering aura. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen and Li Shi were awakened and were immune to Prince Nicholas's aura of a child of the dimension. You're finally here. Before you came, there were still 11 orders waiting to be issued, and twice as many people waiting to be met. But I still pushed back all these schedules and made a special trip to welcome you. Prince Nicholas smiled sincerely. Bai Xiaowen pretended to be terrified. It's my honor to be valued by your highness. Prince Nicholas smiled. There's no need to feel uneasy. Based on your achievements, I can't overemphasize how much I value you. The people of Maple City were able to escape from the clutches of the plague of the dead all because of you and that scholar under your command. Oh right, is that scholar here yet? I'd like to reward him as well. Bai Xiaowen sighed and said, Your Highness, I've already done my best, but only about half of the people of Maple City survived. The other half eventually became undead and were killed by my guards. I'm ashamed that I couldn't save more people. This truth could not be concealed or tampered with. After all, Prince Nicholas still had 2 high-level spies, the Knight Job and the Knight Ferdinand, who were constantly monitoring the changes in Maple City. During the few days when the Plague Bane was used, the 2 knights had been helping to maintain order in Maple City. How could the fact that at least half of the people had died be kept a secret? Moreover, Bai Xiaowen had bought low and sold high, using the Plague Bane to amass wealth. This move could not have escaped the eyes of the 2 knights, and Prince Nicholas must have known as well. However, Prince Nicholas did not feel that there was anything wrong with this. He was the heir to the throne who had received elite education from the royal family since he was young, not a hot-blooded youth who had been brainwashed by the doctrine of the knights. Of course, he knew that there were no fish in the clear water. It was a fact that Bai Xiaowen had saved more than 10,000 people, and it was also an undeniable achievement. Under this premise, Bai Xiaowen was only greedy for money and did not cross the line by force. Prince Nicholas would definitely turn a blind eye to this. As for the reward for the scholar, since Bai Xiaowen had interrupted, Prince Nicholas tacitly did not mention it again. This was actually a taboo topic. In the Cane Plain, there was a saying that went, "My vassal's vassal is not my vassal." The explanation was that Bai Xiaowen was a feudal lord who had been appointed by the Gorse Empire, and was considered a vassal of the emperor. However, the army and talents under Bai Xiaowen's command were all Bai Xiaowen's personal vassals, and the empire could not directly order them around. This was also a characteristic of the ancient feudal system on Earth, such as the Eastern Zhou dynasty of the Huaxia and the Middle Ages of Europe. Dr. Zombie had developed the antidote to the plague bane, so he was definitely a rare talent. When Prince Nicholas mentioned the reward, it was inevitable that he wanted to test whether he could poach this scholar to his side for his own use. Of course, Bai Xiaowen was confident. He was Dr. Zombie's master, and this was undeniable. The reason why he did not want Dr. Zombie and Prince Nicholas to meet was because he did not want to arouse suspicion. With Dr. Zombie's style of speaking, which was full of modern terms, he would be exposed in a few sentences. Prince Nicholas was not an ignorant girl like Barita, who could be vaguely dismissed. If he saw through Bai Xiaowen and Dr. Zombie's identities that did not belong to the Cane Plane, it would not be good. Prince Nicholas said, "You don't have to blame yourself too much. I should be the one blaming myself. As a prince, I was unable to save my people and could only give the order to massacre the city. If it weren't for your existence, none of the residents of Maple City would have survived." After a pause, Prince Nicholas said, "You have made a great contribution. Also, I haven't forgotten your contribution in investigating the truth of the undead plague in Maple City." A notification from the Spirit World's laws sounded, part of the completion conditions for the hero-level main mission, Step 2, Fight the Plague. Mission Objective A has been completed, and the individual completion rate is 47%. The overall mission completion rate is not satisfactory. Do you want to submit the mission with the above completion rate? It seems that Mission Objective A is relatively simple, and its weight in the overall completion rate is only 1/3, while Mission Objective B's overall weight is 2/3. Bai Xiaowen did not even blink as he calculated the ratio. Bai Xiaowen chose to refuse. Facing Prince Nicholas's puzzled gaze, he said sincerely, "The cause of fighting the undead plague is not over yet. I have already made up my mind to eliminate all the plague undead in the entire northern frontier. Please allow me, Your Highness." This statement meant that Bai Xiaowen was unwilling to submit the mission, but wanted to complete Mission Objective B as well, and then calculate the completion rate at the end. Prince Nicholas nodded and praised, "Your ambition is great and admirable." A notification from the Spirit World's laws sounded again, "The hero-level side mission, Step 2, Fight the Plague, is temporarily sealed. The reward for the hero-level side mission, Step 1, Truth of the Plague, will now be issued. Your team has gained 3,000 merit points from the Human Race Alliance Army. You have received a special item, Oath of Shattering. Detected that you currently have a total of 3 special items, Oath of Shattering. Side mission, Ebony's Oath, activated. Mission objective, obtain a total of 7 special items, Oath of Shattering and combine them. Mission deadline, none. Mission difficulty, unknown. Mission reward, special item, Oath of Ebony. Oath of Ebony, party creation tool. It allows an awakened below level 6, including level 6, same below, to create a small team and recruit other awakened below level 6 to join. The total number of members in the team cannot exceed 2. When the members of the team fight side by side, there will be a certain bonus effect. Once the team is created, it will be permanent unless the team leader chooses to disband. The 3,000 merit points were just SOSO, but the reward of Oath of Shattering and the side mission, Ebony's Oath, that continued to be activated made Bai Xiaowen very excited. This was a permanent party creation tool. A permanent party creation tool could not only save the mana points needed to form a temporary team once and for all, but it also had a more important bonus effect compared to a temporary team, and that was the bonus effect of fighting side by side. According to the available information, some party creation tools had a very abnormal bonus effect that could greatly increase the strength of the team members. Of course, there were also some team leaders who were unlucky and got a mediocre bonus effect. This was also related to the quality of the party creation tool. However, even if it was a very average party buff, it was still better than nothing. There were a total of 7 Ebony Adjudicator Knights like Ian. According to the normal method, all 7 of them should be killed, and each of them would drop Oath of Shattering. The final combination would be the Oath of Ebony. However, Bai Xiaowen was now on the prince's side. They were all comrades, so he could only take the route of the mission reward. getting the remaining 4 oaths of shattering from Prince Nicholas became Bai Xiaowen's main goal. Prince Nicholas said, "According to the previous agreement, you are now the commander of the 17th Infantry Unit. The vanguard of the sinners will arrive at any time, so there is no time for us to chat. Go, Lord Dior, and use your troops as the main force to form the 17th Infantry Unit. The Empire needs your strength." Bai Xiaowen nodded and thumped his chest with his right hand. "I will shed my last drop of blood for the Empire, Your Highness." Prince Nicholas nodded with relief. Bai Xiaowen turned and left. With his high spiritual power, he could faintly feel that Prince Nicholas's gaze was profound and continued to stare at him for a long time. There were a total of 3 lines of black rock defense line, and each line was defended by 3 infantry units. There were a total of 9 infantry units, from the 11th to the 19th. These 9 square formations were formed by the private soldiers of the northern frontier lords. As for the 1st to 10th units, they were the Imperial Army led by Prince Nicholas himself, and they were guarding the Black Rock defense line. Simply put, the 11th to 19th units were cannon fodder. The Black Rock defense line was already overcrowded, so these 9 units could not be stationed in the Black Rock defense line. They could only be used to deplete the enemy's forces. Bai Xiaowen's 17th Infantry Unit was assigned to the innermost 3rd line of defense. This line of defense was undoubtedly the safest. Only when the first 2 lines completely collapsed would the 3rd line of defense face the enemy's attack. This was a special arrangement by Prince Nicholas. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen was also appointed as the front-line commander of the 3rd line of defense. This was part of the hidden benefit of completing the 2nd step of the heroic side quest, and that was the favorability of Prince Nicholas. As long as it did not affect the overall situation, he would arrange for Bai Xiaowen's troops to be in a safer position. Bai Xiaowen climbed to a high place and looked into the distance. He could vaguely see the vanguard army of the remnant people. Groups of short and strong orc laborers were busy setting up camps and preparing places to rest for the batches of troops that would arrive later. "The 3rd line of defense is safe, but shouldn't we move forward a little?" Li Shi said. "Only by killing more enemies can we get more treasure chests and earn more merit points." Chapter 270. Bai Xiaowen met the other 2 commanders of the 3rd line of defense. These 2 infantry phalanx commanders were also lords of 2 territories in the northern borderline, but their titles were higher than Bai Xiaowen's. The leader of the 18th formation was a male lord called Julian. He was a viscount and an elite template. His strength was average, and he was able to become the commander of an infantry formation mainly because of the large number of soldiers he had recruited from his territory. He had more than 500 soldiers, which was the same as Bai Xiaowen's. The other lord was a beautiful woman named Cecilia. She was also a viscount. She had an excellent figure with a curvaceous front and back. Her silver armor only covered the important parts of her body for ease of battle, leaving a lot of space for people's imagination to run wild. Although they were both viscounts, this woman was much more powerful than Julian. She was a leader. She had dozens of elite knights under her command. Every knight had a warhorse and armor. This was very important. In addition, there were hundreds of guards, which formed the main force of the 19th formation. Although the 2 of them greeted Bai Xiaowen out of courtesy, their attitude was more reserved, and they were somewhat indifferent to Bai Xiaowen. The reason was simple. Bai Xiaowen was just a baron, and the soldiers under his command were also mixed. How could he be the commander of the 3rd line of defense? The 2 of them were definitely dissatisfied with Bai Xiaowen riding on their heads. However, despite his dissatisfaction, Julian did not show too much dissatisfaction. He only said a few perfunctory words, such as "we will definitely cooperate in the battle." On the contrary, female overlord Cecilia clearly expressed her opinion. "Although I respect His Royal Highness very much, I still think that appointing a little boy who hasn't even grown his hair as a commander is a bit of a joke. During the battle, I will keep an eye on you. If your orders are not appropriate, don't expect me to carry them out." Bai Xiaowen frowned and said, if you are not satisfied with the prince's orders, you can go to Blackrock Fortress to see him and ask him to replace me. However, as long as I am the commander, you must obey my orders. If you refuse to obey my orders, I will report it to the prince after the war. Then go and report it. I won't let my soldiers listen to the orders of a rookie with no military experience." Cecilia turned around and left, her hips swaying under the white cloak as she walked away. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Lord Julian laughed and tried to smooth things over. "Baron Dior, Cecilia is not to be trifled with. She is the most famous beauty in the northern border, nicknamed White Rose. Ever since her husband passed away, she inherited the fief and title according to the will. Many people have had ideas about this pretty widow, but without exception, all of them were rejected. White Rose. This was a common flower used in funerals in the northern frontier. "That's not a very nice nickname," Bai Xiaowen said. "Yes," Lord Julian said. "You know, those who were rejected by White Rose were all people of high status. Because of this, Cecilia's territory was under a lot of pressure, and even bandits ran rampant. Some of the bandits were even ordered by someone to cause trouble. However, in just a few months, Cecilia stabilized the situation. She killed several bandit leaders with her own hands, and sent their heads to the suspected mastermind behind the scenes. She also gave them a bouquet of white roses as a funeral flower. Since then, the nickname White Rose has been known." Lord Julian concluded. "So, you don't have to take her words to heart. In fact, even if you report it to the prince, it won't make much sense. In this critical period, the prince will not casually remove the commander of an infantry phalanx, especially a powerful one like White Rose. Listen to me, we will lose the front line sooner or later. When all the guards are dead, we will go back to Blackrock Fortress to enjoy our lives." The corner of Bai Xiaowen's mouth twitched. "You're right. In fact, Bai Xiaowen knew that Prince Nicholas would not casually remove a commander. What he said before was a necessary attitude for a new commander. As for Cecilia, that little widow, he would teach her a good lesson on the battlefield." After an unpleasant meeting with the commanders, Bai Xiaowen organized the 17th Infantry Division into a phalanx formation. The old ones would lead the new ones, and every 50 people would form a team. There were a total of 13 teams, and each team had an elite as the leader. Bai Xiaowen used his spiritual connection to command the troops through these captains. Each team only looked at the flag of the captain, and they practiced advancing, stopping, retreating, and detouring. However, when it came to the real battlefield, the newly recruited civilians would not be so calm. This was also the reason why Bai Xiaowen divided the formation and let the old soldiers lead the new soldiers. After a few battles, the new soldiers would naturally become veterans, and those who could not become veterans would all die. At dusk, Bai Xiaowen received an order from Prince Nicholas. The 9 infantry phalanxes of the 3 lines of defense should take the initiative to attack while the vanguard army of the remnant people had just arrived and was not stable. Destroy the vanguard camp of the remnant people that had not been built yet. The prince was supervising the battle from the top of the city wall, and the execution of the order was still very strong. The commanders of the 9 infantry phalanxes secretly cursed this order that would send people to their deaths, and shouted loudly to organize the troops. It was a mess. After this motley crew was integrated, they began to advance to the remnant people's village at the speed of a turtle. It was an insult to a turtle to call it a turtle. According to the speed of the 3 infantry phalanxes of the first line of defense, they moved only a few centimeters per step, which was slower than a snail. The remnant people's village was already prepared. One by one, the half-orcs with spears rushed out from the orc laborers without any formation. They howled and rushed to the infantry phalanxes of the Human Alliance army. Seeing this scene, the 3 infantry phalanxes in front of them did not move. They held weapons such as swords and shields and waited in place, giving off a sense of majesty that was as immovable as a mountain. The charge of the half-orc spearmen of the remnant people was like a roaring wave. The 3 infantry phalanxes of the first line of defense were like castles on the beach. Cries and curses sounded almost immediately. Bai Xiaowen stood on the back of the Wrath Claw. With his eyesight, he could almost clearly see the process of the battle. A half-orc spear-wielding spear pierced through the wooden shield without any fancy moves and pierced through the person hiding behind the wooden shield. A sword slashed from the side, leaving a bloody mark on the shoulder of the half-orc spearman, but he didn't care at all. Instead, he became even more ferocious. With a roar, he held the spear with both hands and pushed forward with all his might. He pushed the human soldier who was penetrated by the spear back more than 10 meters. His feet plowed 2 deep trenches in the ground. The same scene happened in other places. As soon as they came into contact, the infantry phalanxes of the first line of defense of the Human Alliance army were disorganized. Of course, the Human Alliance army was not all weak. There were also some elites who roared and waved their swords and heavy shields to kill the enemy. However, the loss ratio of both sides was still very alarming. According to Bai Xiaowen's visual estimation, on average, 4 to 5 people of the Human Alliance army were killed in exchange for 1 half-orc spearman. Fortunately, in the first contact, the Human Alliance army had the advantage of numbers, and the battle was in a stalemate. Dull drums sounded, and suddenly, 2 black waves rushed out between the camp roads that were being built by the survivors. 2 orc wolf riders joined the battlefield with machetes. The orc wolf riders were one of the main forces of the orcs. They were fierce and aggressive. In terms of explosive power, they were stronger than the elite cavalry of the human race. However, the wolf riders could not travel long distances because of the limited endurance of their mounts. This was also their shortcoming. At this time, the survivors released the wolf riders to play to their advantage. The 2 wolf riders were like 2 red-hot iron rods, poking into the infantry phalanxes of the Human Alliance army. Wherever the machetes went, heads would roll. The ferocious wolves also bit, and many of the warhorses of the human cavalrymen were frightened and retreated. The cavalry, which represented the backbone of the Human Alliance army, was defeated. Those low-level swordsmen and spearmen were defeated at the first touch. The front team affected the rear team. Once the morale was lost, it was like pushing down dominoes. The consequences were certainly fatal. A rough estimate showed that the 2 wolf riders had less than 200 people in total, but they could play a role in the battle. They could make the first line of defense, which had a total of nearly 2,000 people, and the 3 infantry phalanxes retreat. This was the terrifying part of the cavalry charge. At this time, a clear female voice sounded. 45 degrees, throw. It was White Rose Cecilia. She was riding a tall white horse. She pointed her rapier in the direction of the orc wolf riders and suddenly pointed it. Rustle. Under the command of the dozens of white-armored knights, the archers under Cecilia's command all drew their bows and shot. The thrown arrows fell like raindrops, and the penetrating power was quite strong. The orc wolf riders could still charge with injuries if they were shot by 1 arrow, but they could not withstand 2 or 3 arrows. Especially after the wolves were injured, their speed was reduced sharply. However, at this time, the wolf riders were chasing the Human Alliance army at the first line of defense, and the distance between the 2 sides was very close. Cecilia's throw order was accurate, but some of the arrows still hit their own people. The 3 lords at the first line of defense cursed angrily. Cecilia. Stop your shooting, I'm an ally. Enough. More of our compatriots died under your arrows than under the orcs. However, no matter how they cursed, Cecilia did not retract the rapier in her hand. The archers under her command also did not stop shooting. Li Shi saw this and said with some admiration, "She's really an iron-blooded female general. She's too cool." Bai Xiaowen said, "I just want to know, if she keeps maintaining this position, doesn't her arm get tired?" Li Shi rolled his eyes at Bai Xiaowen. "Alright, should we make a move too? Prince Nicholas is watching. Cecilia has stolen the limelight." Bai Xiaowen looked back at Prince Nicholas, who was supervising the battle on the city wall, and smiled. "Don't be anxious. Now is not the time." Under the obstruction of the rain of arrows, the orc wolf riders finally stopped their charge. The collapse of the first line of defense only disrupted part of the formation of the second line of defense. It did not lead to a complete collapse. At this moment, Prince Nicholas's second order arrived. This order was very short, with only 4 words: all troops, charge. After receiving this order, a few lords were extremely shocked. They had already suffered a great loss, but the Empire's elite troops in the fortress did not appear. Instead, they were ordered to continue charging. Some of them could not help but have sinister thoughts. Could it be that Prince Nicholas wanted to kill all these bumpkin recruits in one go to save on rations? Some of them were unwilling, but people like Lord Julian did not care. If they were killed, then so be it. They had nothing to do and could return to the Black Rock Fortress to hide. No matter what, Prince Nicholas was still supervising the battle on the city wall. No one dared to disobey his orders openly. After a short period of reorganization, the 9 infantry formations began their second attack. This time, even the third line of defense, whereby Xiaowen was, joined the battle. On the road of the remnant's stronghold, teams of orc spearmen poured out like a tide, mixed with troll headhunters. This was the elite of the remnant, a genuine elite template. It seemed that the commander of the remnant was also annoyed by the harassment of the Human Alliance army. He wanted to teach the Human Alliance army a lesson that they would never forget. Roar, a tall troll headhunter stabbed with his spear from a high vantage point, killing several soldiers of the Human Alliance army in succession. The berserk status on his body had been stacked 3 times, and his attacks became more and more swift. When he was in the mood to kill, this troll headhunter even directly pulled over a Human Alliance army soldier who was wearing simple leather armor and bit down with his mouth with long fangs. He tore off a large piece of flesh from the enemy's body and chewed it with blood. He was simply an evil spirit from hell, and his image was terrifying. The surrounding Human Alliance army soldiers were frightened and fled. Only a knight in full armor, shouting slogans such as "Justice will prevail," launched a counterattack. However, the troll headhunter grinned, bit his finger, and smeared some blood on his spear. After chanting a word, the spear stabbed out with a bloody light. Blood explosion assassination. The knight was directly pierced through and fell from his warhorse. The same scene appeared in other places. This time, the Human Alliance army could not withstand it and retreated one after another. At this moment, the sound of a horn could be heard. From the horizon on both sides of the battlefield, 2 cavalry units suddenly appeared. These 2 cavalry units, both flying the flag of the Gorse Empire, charged at the remnant's stronghold from the flanks. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.